Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting now that we're finally set and ready to go. I'd like to just start by explaining that this is an all committees meeting, and we did start actually at 4:30 this afternoon with confidential. And so coming out of this meeting now, it's as though we've done confidential and we've had a bit of a recess while everybody got to the washroom and whatnot, and then while we got our technical things under control. And so now we're picking up where we left off. So I am happy to see so many of you here this evening. I'm sure it's because of our public meetings that will follow very shortly. So we do have a little bit of business to do coming out of confidential, first of all. So I first of all need a mover and a seconder to bring us back into open session. So Councillor Chichok, please, if you'll move that. I just did. Okay. And we're moving back out, and it actually is 6:41, so we'll take that time. And someone to second that, please. Councillor Riley. And all in favor of moving back into open session? And that carries. Thank you. So we went into confidential for 4 different reasons. One was Director of Planning and Building Brian Treble, who provided a verbal update about a legal solicitor client privilege subject that was under the Ontario Land Tribunal. And so it was about our OPA 63, actually, and so that's an ongoing file. So we learned a little bit about that. 2.2, the other reason for going in, under Director of Planning and Building Brian Treble, was a property matter, a bylaw enforcement matter, cannabis enforcement, actually, and that was another verbal update. The third reason for going into confidential had to do with citizen appointments on boards and committees, and because we use people's names, obviously, and are discussing them, that also is done in confidential. And so we do have a resolution coming out from that, and I'm going to read it, and then I'll ask for a mover and a seconder. So number 1 is that the following persons be and are hereby appointed to serve on the following committees and or boards until their successors are appointed. 1 was the Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee, and Giselle Caraban is the person who applied. Number 2 is the Age Friendly Advisory Committee, and Stuart Lord has made application to be part of that committee. And number 3 is the Transit Commission Public Advisory Committee, which is a new committee that was just advertised in the paper. It's a Niagara Regional appointment, and Stuart Lord, again, was the person that we're looking at. And so the second part of this recommendation is that Anne-Marie Norio, who is the regional clerk, be advised of Stuart Lord's appointment as the Township of West Lincoln citizen representative for the Transit Commission Public Advisory Committee. And number 3 is that a bylaw be presented at the January 29th, 2024 council meeting to amend the bylaw 2023-03, being the appointment bylaw for boards and committees, specifically Schedule A, the West Lincoln Age Friendly Advisory Committee, and Schedule D, which is the Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee. So I need someone to move that, please. Councillor Riley, thank you. And someone to second it. Councillor Trombetta, thank you. And again, we'll just do this by show of hands. All in favor? Thank you. That resolution carries. Thank you. And the 4th reason for going in was, again, Director of Legislative Services and our clerk, Jessica Dyson, and it was a personnel matter, and that is our CAO recruitment process. So, Madam Clerk, you have a recommendation coming out of that.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So the recommendation reads as follows, that the mayor and clerk be and are hereby authorized to proceed as directed in closed session with respect to a personnel matter as it relates to the appointment of an interim CAO, and that 2, the hiring committee for the position of CAO be comprised of Mayor Cheryl Gannan, the deputy mayor being Councillor Riley, Councillor Shelley Broderick, the Director of Legislative Services and clerk, and the Human Resources Coordinator as a non-voting member.
Okay, so and someone to move that, please. Councillor Rayner, and second it. Councillor Trombetta, thank you. And again, just a show of hands, all those in favor? And that resolution also carries. Thank you. Okay, so before beginning this all-committee, I'm going to I have a few things I have to do. One is that comments from the public for a matter that's on the agenda may be provided in person by attending the meeting and advising the chair during the request to address an item on the agenda section of the agenda. For those individuals that are unable to attend the meeting in person, and that obviously is not the rest of you since you're here, but you may submit comments if ever you can't be here for matters that are on the agenda by either emailing jdyson@westlincoln.ca before 4:30 on the day of the meeting. Comments submitted will be considered as public information and read into the public record, or by contacting the Clerk's Department to request a Zoom link to attend the meeting virtually. And tonight's open portion of the all-committee meeting will be live-streamed as well as recorded and available on the Township's website by visiting events.westlincoln/meetings. So before beginning officially the opening of this meeting, I want to point out that Councillor Bell is absent this evening when he sends his regrets. And I'd also like to take a minute to welcome Chief Fisher back in his role, and also take this public opportunity to thank Deputy Chief Hofsink for filling in for that long period of time. He did a remarkable job, and we're glad to have two people back sharing that position rather than just one person doing double duty. So welcome, both of you. The land acknowledgement statement will begin our meeting. The Township of West Lincoln, being part of the Niagara region, is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattaway-Wendrock, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The Township of West Lincoln, as part of the regional municipality of Niagara, stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. I'm next going to ask if there are any changes in order of items on this agenda, members of council. And seeing none, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest and/or conflict of interest? Okay, and seeing none. So at this point in time, our public meetings will begin, and so I'm going to leave this chair and turn it over to Councillor Riley, who chairs the Planning, Building, and Environmental Committee, and then he will do the 4 public meetings, and then I'll take this back again. Councillor Riley.
Good evening, everyone. All right, so our first public meeting is regarding a street naming of Thrive subdivision, and so I must read that this public meeting is being held in accordance with Municipal Act SO 2001, Chapter 25, and the Township of West Lincoln's procedural bylaw and street naming policy, being policy POL PD 0111 for the street naming of the Thrive subdivision. The Township of West Lincoln procedural bylaw states that any matter pertaining to naming of a highway and or public or private road in a plan of subdivision or plan of condominium for which notice is required to be given, notice shall be published, notice should be published at least once, the date of the publication being at least 7 days prior to the council meeting indicated in the notice. So at this point, I'm going to turn to our clerk to please advise the method and dates of which the notice of the public meeting was given.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Proper notice was circulated to applicable agencies and advertised on the Township's website, as well as advertised in local newspapers on December 14th, 2023.
Thank you. And then at this point, I will ask Manager of Planning, Garrett Borma, to please explain the proposed street naming. So, we're going to have Susan come up. All right, my notes say Garrett, so that is fine. So welcome, Susan.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair, Committee, and Council. I am here to present an application that was submitted by Mars Homes Smithville West, Inc. for the naming of 2 local public roads in the Thrive subdivision. To give some history on this development, the zoning bylaw amendment and Thrive draft plan of subdivision was approved by Township Council on November 25th, 2021. The 10.3 hectares or 25.6 acres of lot is located directly south of the CP rail line and directly west of South Grimsby Road 5 and north of Regional Road 20. The draft plan of subdivision application proposes to create approximately 224 to 268 dwellings, ranging from low to high density residential. There are blocks dedicated for parkland and recreational trail, as well as for stormwater management. The proposed subdivision will be phased, with the first phase including the construction of 88 units until such time as a second permanent access is constructed to either South Grimsby Road 5 or west to connect with a traffic circle along Regional Road 20. Conditions of the draft plan of subdivision must be satisfied before final approval is granted. One of the conditions is properly naming the streets by bylaw and holding a public meeting. The proposed names are Atkinson Street, which runs north from Regional Road 20 and east to a future connection with South Grimsby Road 5, and Daniels Street, which is an internal road that runs east-west with future connections to South Grimsby Road 5 to the east and connection to a future development to the west that will eventually head south to Regional Road 20 traffic circle. The township has a street naming policy and states that at least 50% of the proposed street names shall be taken from the approved list for new developments. Both of these names were selected from the approved township list of street names. The developer is seeking final approval to clear conditions of draft plan of subdivision. Hence, condition number 5 is to construct and name the public roads. Therefore, Atkinson Street and Daniels Street is being proposed and will be done to the satisfaction of the township and dedicated to the township as public highways. Planning staff is recommending that the proposed street names of Atkinson Street and Daniel Street of the Thrive subdivision be named accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. And as, if I understand correctly, the applicant authorized agent is present to speak to this as well. Jared Marcus, can you hear us? For those at home, he's on Zoom here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Here on behalf of Mars Homes, where we've read Ms. Smythe's report. We don't have any concerns with the report. We're just here to answer any questions if there are questions from the committee tonight.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so I will go to the public submissions. I'll ask that, are there any oral or written submissions from anyone present in this meeting, either in person or Zoom, regarding the street naming? I would like to stress that this may be your only chance this may be the only public meeting held with respect to this application. Therefore, if any members of the public meeting that is in attendance at this public meeting would like to make their comments and or provide written comments, they should do so now. And if you're attending, we're going to jump to virtually and would like to provide your comments, you can do so by using one or two options. If you're on a computer or smartphone, you're just going to raise your hand through those controls, which can be found in the Zoom options, or if you called in on a landline, which I haven't seen just yet, but if you are, you're just going to, I believe it's you'll hit *9, and then that will notify staff that you've raised your hands, and then once you had a chance to speak, I'll ask that you remute yourself so that we can proceed with the meeting. So at this point, I'm going to go to our IT to see if there's anyone present in our online gallery, and if so, if we have any hands raised, not seeing any. Perfect. So now I'm going to go to the gallery here. Would anyone present like to have your chance to speak to this? Again, this may be your only chance to speak to it. So if you have any questions or comments, this is the time to speak. Not seeing or hearing any. So I'll go to members of committee here to ask if there are any oral or written submissions regarding the street naming consideration. Councillor Trombetta has been recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Director Treble/CAO. Mr. Treble there. I know this, the street naming, it's not that I have a problem with the naming of the streets, but this came to the pass that we did have some renaming or renaming of a subdivision prior in this community. It brought up some flags that it wasn't on the Heritage Committee list and so on and so forth. You know, just for, I guess, more transparency, you know, if this future happens, or someone to raise a question saying, you know, usually we take from the list of from the Heritage Committee. How do we? I know, are these in line with that, or what can maybe you can add to my thoughts, I guess?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. The Heritage Committee list is circulated by staff to all of the applicants, and these names are both off of that list.
Okay.
There are other names that have been expressed as interest in the future, so we're going to encourage that people keep using that list. I think the language of the policy requires that the majority come from the list at least. In this case, I believe both are off the list.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that.
Any other, Councillor Chichak?
I know it was some time ago that the heritage list was put together, and I note that even I'm losing connectivity with that list as the names are starting to become more newer than they were. So what is the process for going about adding and advantaging the community by names that are still of a longer term relevance to the township?
Perfect, great question. I'll go back to our acting CEO.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. What I would suggest is that our Heritage Committee, who is active again this term of council, could take another look at the list, and if there's suggestions for names that should be added to the list, we could deflect those through staff to the committee and have them have a further discussion. I know you're right, there's newer names that might be appropriate on the list, and there's some that might have some priority over others based on some discussions that the mayor and I have had recently as well. So certainly we could ask the Heritage Committee to take a further look.
Thank you, and I would hope that we would do an outreach, Mr. Chair, because thankfully it seems that our Canadian peacekeeping forces are not as active as they were, and we are not losing the kind of young men and women that we have in previous wars and uprisings that occurred. And I'd like to think that there were some times that we could use people of significance in the community, or just names that have become, I know our family has a couple of names for a couple of roads that we've just developed over the years. None that I'd expect you to use, believe me. But I would like to think that the Heritage Committee would also go out to the community somehow and ask, whether it's young people. Mayor's task force is growing faster than council, and there's people who actually have an interest in our community. So let's reach out somehow, and whether it's the Heritage Committee that's going to be the repository of these kinds of names or kinds of additions, or the adjudicator, I don't really care. I just like to know that we're enriching that list, and as we grow, which in future could be more quickly than we have in the past, I'd like to know that some people have gotten their names onto the list.
Perfect, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe Councillor Bradrick also serves on that committee, and she'll speak to that as well.
Yes, I expected that she'd reply, and I thank you for doing that.
Thank you. So through you, Chair, to Councillor Chichak. I am the council representative of the Heritage Committee, and we're really getting our groove on this term. Last term was a little slow with the pandemic and Zoom meetings, but we have made a connection with the one and only local high school, and we have had 4 youth come out to our last Heritage Committee meeting, and they'll be coming out with the history teacher. And so we've made a community connection with youth being connected to that, and lots of great ideas floating about, and I'll make sure that gets put on the next agenda.
Amazing, thank you. Go ahead,
Mr. Chair, just don't forget, there's a lot of our children who go to 2 high schools that are not located here, so please encourage those to also be vocal. I just can see Robot and R2D2 as roads in the future, so I look forward to their exciting new additions.
Suppose anything's possible. All right, thank you. So moving forward, not seeing any other members of the committee. Got any questions? I'll go to the report consideration. So please be advised that a technical report is being considered by the Planning Committee this evening, and that a recommendation report will be forthcoming to a future Planning Committee and/or Council meeting. Everyone is invited to stay in attendance to hear the committee's comments and/or recommendations with respect to that application, which will take place shortly following the conclusion of this public meeting. And those who wish to be advised of any subsequent meeting and/or decisions on that matter may email the Township Clerk, Jessica Dyson, at jdyson@westlincoln.ca. So this public meeting with respect to the proposed street renaming is concluded at the hour, I'm going to say, of 6:59 p.m. We're going to move forward to the next meeting there. All right. Quarter way through. Here we go. So now this public meeting is to consider a zoning bylaw amendment application to fulfill a condition of consent for a severance. So Ben and Pam Heaslip for 4813 Canberra Road, file number 1601-00823. must state that the Planning Act requires in Section 3412 that before passing a zoning bylaw amendment, council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public in respect of the amendment. The purpose of this public meeting is to receive comments and answer questions from the public regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. We stress that at this point, no decision has been made on the proposed amendment, and any comments received will be taken into account by council in their consideration. The Planning Act requirements require me to say that the Planning Act requires through Section 3413 that council advise the public that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of West Lincoln before the bylaw is passed, that person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of council for the Township of West Lincoln to the Ontario Land Tribunal, also recognized as the OLT. So at this point, I'm going to turn to our clerk to advise the methods and dates of which notice to the public was given.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Proper notice was given by way of email circulation to agencies and mail circulation to all residents within 120 meters of the subject property on December 11, 2023. Public notice was also posted on the subject property on December 26, 2023.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to start by welcoming our Garrett back here. Garrett Borma has just come back to the township now as manager of planning, so welcome back. At this point, I'll ask you to please explain the purpose and reason for this zoning bylaw amendment.
Thank you, and it's good to be back. An application for zoning bylaw amendment has been made by Ben and Pam Heaslip for their property located at 4813 Canberra Road. The property is located just to the east of the hamlet of Wellandport. And the Heaslips have recently purchased the farm property and have obtained a conditional severance to sever the surplus farm dwelling with a little over an acre of land from the farmland, which they are retaining. As a condition of this severance, the Heaslips must rezone the small holding, the residential property, to a rural residential zone, and must rezone the retained agricultural land to an agricultural purposes only zone, to preclude any future residential uses as per the provincial, regional, and local planning policy. The zoning is also proposing to recognize a deficient lot area on the agricultural retained lands, being 34 hectares, whereas 39 hectares is required by the zoning bylaw, and recognizing lot coverage deficiency for agricultural buildings on the severed residential parcel. To date, staff have not received any public comments on this application. And based on planning staff review, this application meets the applicable planning policy. And therefore, planning staff can recommend approval at this time, subject to any public comments raised at this evening's public meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just inquire briefly here to see if the applicant and their authorized agent is available and wishing to present or speak. I don't see or hear anything. I'll assume no, but I'll give you a split second there. All right, I'm going to move to public submissions. Are there any oral written submissions from anyone present in the meeting, either in person or on Zoom, regarding proposed zoning bylaw amendment? I do need to stress that this may be the only public meeting held with respect to this application. Therefore, if any members of the public that are in attendance at this public meeting would like to make comments and or provide the written comments, they should do so now. I'm going to go to the virtual gallery first to see if we have anybody else who's showing up. It's not looking like it. So I will look around the room here to see if there's anybody present that would like to speak to this particular application. Not seeing or hearing any. So I'm going to turn to members of committee to see if there's any comments from members of committee. Not seeing or hearing any. So we're just motoring through here. That's great. So then I must state that please be advised that a technical and recommendation report is being considered by this committee this evening. Please also be advised that once committee and or council has made a decision with respect to the zoning bylaw amendment, and if approved by council, a notice of its passing will be circulated with an appeal period. If you wish to be notified of council's decision, please ensure that you email the township clerk, Jessica Dyson, at jdyson@westlincoln.ca. I will also mention that anyone who is interested in observing council and or committee discussions about a particular bylaw should not solely rely on mailed notices and thus potentially miss the opportunity to attend an applicable meeting. It is suggested that you watch the township's website for the posting of agendas to review the items that will be discussed at a council and or committee meeting. The agendas for the meetings are posted on the township website after 4 p.m. on the Friday prior to the meeting. Additionally, meeting schedules are also posted on the township website for the public to view. And if you wish to receive notices by email, it is suggested that you contact the township clerk to advise of your request, including your email along with your mailing address and your phone number. So, at this point, this public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is concluded at the hour of 7:05 p.m. I will move forward to our third public meeting. All right. Everybody ready? So now this public meeting is to consider a zoning bylaw amendment application for a temporary use bylaw. So we have Sharon and John Molnar, hope I said that right, 5909 Regional Road 20, and the file number is 1601-00923. So I must state that the Planning Act requires in Section 3412 and Section 39 that before passing a zoning bylaw amendment and a temporary use bylaw, council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public in respect of the amendment. The purpose of this public meeting is to receive comments and answer questions from the public regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. We stress that at this point, no decision has been made on the proposed amendment, and any comments received will be taken into account by council and their consideration. I must also state that the Planning Act requires through Section 3413 that council advise the public that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of West Lincoln before the passing of its bylaw, that person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of council for the Township of West Lincoln to the Ontario Land Tribunal, also recognized as the OLT. So at this point, I'll turn to the clerk to please advise the methods and dates of which notice of the public meeting was given.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Proper notice was given by way of email circulation to agencies and mail circulation to all residents within 120 meters of the subject property on December 12th, 2023. Public notice was also posted on the subject property on December 20th, 2023.
Perfect, thank you. So I'll go back to our Manager of Planning, Garrett Borima, to please explain the purpose and reason for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment.
Thank you. John Molnar, Tanis Waldron, and Sharon Molnar have submitted a temporary use application to the town to permit a garden suite on their property at 5909 Regional Road 20. And that property is just east of Smithville, right by Matese Road. Sharon Molnar is the mother of John Molnar, and who is the owner of the property, and she currently resides in Hamilton. She wishes to reside on the subject property closer to her family. Under the Planning Act and the town's official plan, garden suites are permitted for a period of up to 20 years, provided they apply for and obtain a temporary use bylaw and a temporary use agreement to the township. The proposed garden suite is approximately 54 square meters. It's in the form of a mobile home, and it would comply with the town's zoning bylaw in terms of total area and setbacks. A temporary use agreement would additionally be required to regulate the occupants of the garden suite, its location, its servicing, and eventually its removal when it is no longer needed. Planning staff have not received any comments from members of the public and have not received any objections from departments or agencies in our circulation. Planning staff have also reviewed the application against all applicable planning policy and can recommend approval of the application, subject to any comments received this evening during the public meeting. If approved, planning staff would then have to draft a temporary use agreement for the applicants to enter prior to the unit being located on the property. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will just inquire if the applicant or their authorized agent is present and wanting to present or comment. So I'll have you come right up where Garrett is. Garrett, if you could just step off to the side there. Just for the sake of consistency, I'm going to ask you to state your first name, your last name, and your address, and then you can go proceed with your statement there.
I'm Sharon Molnar, so I'm the applicant.
Okay.
And I currently live in Hamilton, hoping to move closer so I'm not tracking back and forth looking after my grandchildren.
Perfect. Okay, and is there anything else you'd like to include with that, or is this general statement?
No, I think everything was included in the application, so if there's anything else that anyone has concerns about.
Let you know. Perfect. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate
Thank
that. All right, so at this point, I'll move forward to public submissions. Are there any oral written submissions from anyone present in the meeting, either in person or on Zoom, regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? I'll go back to our IT to see if anyone has joined. They have not, so that's going to keep things local. Is there anyone present in this meeting here that is wishing to speak to this? I do have to say that so this, again, just a reminder that if you don't speak now, you may not be given a chance to speak later. So this is your one and only chance to speak to it if you're in the gallery here. Not seeing or hearing anything, I'm going to go to members of committee. Do any members of committee have any oral written submissions on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? I have Councilor Rayner's been recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through to Mr. Borma. Mr. Borma, what are the requirements, the standards laid out with regards to applying for this application that would meet the acceptability of this township?
Through the chair to Councilor Rayner, most properties would be able to have a garden suite if they could identify the need for that garden suite, such as, like, for an example, family members who may need to reside closer to the property or closer to the owners of the property, such as this case, where Ms. Molnar wishes to be closer to her family. Another criteria that the town looks for is the ability for the property to handle the additional septic load. And even though this property is slightly under an acre, they have provided information on their septic to show that that can be located on this property. Some other criteria that I briefly mentioned was the need to enter into an agreement with the town. But generally speaking, most properties, if a house is permitted in the township, would permit a garden suite, provided that that garden suite is generally used for family purposes. It's not intended to be like a rental suite. That can be accommodated as an accessory dwelling unit. Accessory dwelling units are a little bit different in that regard. Those could be used for rentals, but this is really intended for family connections. That's in our local policy. The Provincial Planning Act doesn't really specify who the garden suite needs to be for, so there is a bit more flexibility at the provincial level, but in our planning documents, we still have it as really intended for family or close relatives to reside on that property.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to Mr. Garrett, how far back do you go with the relatives? Like, is it the third cousin twice removed from the second marriage, or how far back does it go that is considered to be a family member? Like, is it the children or the grandchildren, and that's it, or can cousins and uncles, and where is the limit? Like, how far back can you go?
Yes, through the chair, I don't think our official plan gets into that level of detail. Maybe if Mr. Treble, the director, wishes to provide any insight into that.
Okay, go ahead.
Excuse me. The only thing I will say, and Sharon, please don't take offense to this because you're a very young grandma, but it was originally known as a granny suite with the intent of it being sort of, parents and kids kind of concept. So I think it's meant to be close family connections.
Yeah, the reason, through you, Mr. Chair, the reason I'm asking that is because what would stop an individual from putting one on and having a cousin that he hasn't seen in 10 years from Nova Scotia move down here, and then he rents it, which is what you didn't want to do. So that's why I was, if it's close family, understand, no problem with it. But how far down the line do you go? If he hasn't seen this guy in 10 years and he's coming to Ontario, I'll put a granny suite in for you. And that brings another question. Granny suites, is that only on, it's got to be an acre of land or more? Is there a parameter on the size of the lot?
So through the chair to Councilor Rayner, I don't believe there is an actual size requirement, with exception that it has to be able to be serviced on that lot. So theoretically, they could be also located in town on full services. I don't believe there's a minimum lot or maximum or minimum lot size. It's just being able to accommodate the additional septic services that would have to go on.
Through you, Mr. Chair, does the one out in the country, for example, they have to hook into the existing septic, or do they have to make a new septic for that?
Through the chair, I believe the rule or the zoning bylaw regulation used to be that they would have to make use of the existing septic system or redo one septic system for both the main principal dwelling and the garden suite. But it is my understanding that that rule has now been changed to allow in extenuating circumstances a secondary bed if it's not feasible to add on to the primary bed. And that is permitted under the building code to have multiple septic beds on one property.
Just one further question, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Garrett. These garden suites, are they normally put on the property of the owner who resides on that property? Or does that owner have the right to put them on every property he owns?
If I could just get clear, are you asking if the primary owner is on the property where the garden suite is?
Right, because the question is, the reason most people do this is because they want their relative there, such in this case, where they can look after the situation. But there could be other situations where they have multiple properties and they would say, well, I'd like to put one on every one. And I'll put a family member on it. I mean, then I said you can bring a lot of family members. Are these mostly directed for it must be put on the owner's property who lives on that property?
The primary residence of the owner.
Primary residence, in other words, yes. Is that the most common?
Through the chair, to my knowledge, that has been typically what is done is it's the owner's primary residence property that then accepts a garden suite. But having said that, Mr. Treble has been around much longer than I have, and maybe he has some further thoughts on that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I really can't think of anything that's been approved different than that. It's always been family and usually on the same property as the principal residence, to the best of my recollection.
Thank you. That's all the questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other members of committee? Oh, sorry, yes, Councillor Chichak.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to whoever, welcome back, Mr. Boerma. I wanted to say that as well. It's good to have your face shining back at us again. Whoever can answer this, in town, and Mr. Boerma made reference to this, we can have 2 units, 2 single-family homes or single dwellings serviced by municipal services on the same site. So in other words, whether it's a loft over a garage or it's a duplex. Is that correct?
Through the chair, Bill, I believe it's Bill 23 allowed for, on urbanized lots, 2 additional units beyond the primary unit. So you can have a principal unit and 2 forms of a secondary or accessory dwelling unit in varying forms,
So without it being a garden suite, in rural areas, unserviced, what does Bill 23 allow us to have?
Through the chair, Bill 23 doesn't speak to rural or agricultural unserviced areas and as of right units in that area. The town does allow, through our zoning, a secondary unit as of right, which could include a garden suite.
So my point, Mr. Chair, is that with Bill 23 and with the lessening of controls of what is going on and the great hope of our existing government, and I know your feelings on that, but reading just the policies and the laws that we have to abide by, a garden suite actually would fall within the parameters the township has for a second dwelling as well. So there's lots of room, whether they're grandparents, grandchildren, returning university students, or your best friend who just became a widow or widower. There's a lot of leeway nowadays for us to intensify urban and rural areas. Am I correct? Through you, Mr. Chair. Yep.
Yes, through the chair, there's definitely that push from a provincial level to maximize lots that already have some sort of services and some sort of residential dwellings to intensify that by adding more units.
And in rural areas, sorry.
Yeah, so I think that has maybe yet to be seen where the province, if they go down that road of pushing for more intensification in rural or agricultural areas, but generally speaking, allowing for accessory dwelling units in rural or agricultural areas with some good regulations to control the location and the size, I believe is generally appropriate.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure these people felt comfortable that there was many ways that there are accommodations for people to be accommodated in rural and urban areas. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, I'll go to our director of planning here to speak to this too.
Just to add to what Mr. Burma has said, the housekeeping amendment that we did a couple of months ago, housekeeping number 7, made changes to the urban provisions to accommodate the provincial requirements. The only change we made at that time with respect to the rural areas was the provision with respect to a little bit of flexibility on the septic system, as Mr. Burma had referred to. Not to say that our amending bylaw housekeeping 7 has it quite right, but we've made that change to try and start implementing provincial policy, and we'll monitor to see how we've done.
Perfect. Any other members of the committee here? All right, so I'll move forward. I'll mention that, again, please be advised that a technical report and recommendation report is being considered by this committee this evening. Please also be advised that once committee and council has made its decision with respect to the zoning bylaw amendment, and if approved by council, a notice of its passing will be circulated with an appeal period. If you wish to be notified of council's decision, please ensure that you email the township clerk, Jessica Dyson, at jdyson.ca. My goodness, jdyson@westlincoln.ca. She's got her own personal website. And anyone who's interested in observing council and/or committee discussions about a particular bylaw should not solely rely on mail notices and thus potentially miss the opportunity to attend an applicable meeting. It is suggested that you watch the township website for the posting of agendas to review the items that will be discussed at council and/or committee meetings. The agendas, again, for the meetings are posted on the township website after 4 p.m. on the Friday prior to the meeting, and additionally, the meeting schedules are also posted on the township website for the public to view. And again, if you wish to receive those notices by email, it is suggested that you contact the township clerk to advise of this request, including your email, mailing address, and phone number. So this public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is concluded at the hour of 7:22. And we will move on to our last one. I have to admit, for almost a full crowd, you guys are pretty quiet. My goodness. I wonder if you're all saving it for the last one. I don't know. Okay. So our next public meeting is a public meeting to consider a zoning bylaw amendment application for a temporary use bylaw. And I have Larry Pomeraz, the agent, and I'm going to say, if I say the name wrong, I apologize, but Giovanni DeFlavio for 9127 Regional Road 20, file number 1601-01023. I do have to state that the Planning Act requires in Section 3412 and Section 39, that before passing a zoning bylaw amendment and temporary use bylaw, council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public with respect to the amendment. The purpose of this public meeting is to receive comments and answer questions from the public regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. And we must stress that at this point, no decision has been made on the proposed amendment, and any comments received will be taken into account by council and their consideration. I do also have to state under the Planning Act requires through Section 3413 that council advise the public that if a person or public body does not make any oral submissions at a public meeting or make a written submission to the Township of West Lincoln before the bylaws pass, that person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of council for the Township of West Lincoln to the Ontario Land Tribunal, also recognized as the OLT. So I'll go to our clerk to see if she could please advise the methods and dates by which notice of the public meeting was given.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Proper notice was given by way of email circulation to agencies and mail circulation to all residents within 120 meters of the subject property on December 12th, 2023. Public notice was also posted on the subject property on December 19th, 2023.
Thank you very much. And so I'll go to our senior planner, Susan Smith, to please explain the purpose and reason for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment.
Again, thank you, Mr. Chair, Committee, and Council. I'm here again to present an application for temporary use zoning bylaw amendment, which has been submitted by Mr. Pomeranz as the agent on behalf of the owner, Mr. DeFlavio. This is to add a temporary use for outside storage for rain barrels and composters. To provide some context on the application, the subject lands are located on the north side of Highway 20 between South Grimsby Road 18 and 19 in the rural settlement of Fulton. The lands are approximately 19.82 hectares or 48.97 acres in size, with an existing dwelling, 3 accessory structures, buildings, and outside storage located primarily on the southwest corner of the site, and rear and eastern section of the lands are actively farmed. The lands are located in the expanded hamlet of Fulton, which is subject to a future secondary plan process aimed to identify the appropriate land use designation for growth localized to Fulton, considering residential and employment lands. There is an existing berm that was constructed running north-south along the western edge of the site by previous owners, of which provides most of the logical and reasonable location for this proposed temporary use to permit a portion of the lands, which is going to be approximately 9712.45 square meters, or 0.97 hectares, 2.4 acres, or approximately 2% of the total lot area for the outside storage of the rain barrels composters. The agent provided some information on the product and noted that they will be approximately 2 feet by 2 feet by 3 feet high and weigh approximately 20 pounds and stored on their sides and stacked in a pyramid to the maximum height of 4.87 meters or 16 feet, where the zoning regulations permits a maximum height of buildings and structures that are not to exceed 10 meters or 32.8 feet. The agent also noted that these products are manufactured off-site. They are distributed through contracts. They have existing contracts with the City of Hamilton, Guelph, Kingston, and other municipalities in the USA and within Niagara region, as well as schools and nonprofit organizations such as the Lions Club. The product is available for online purchases, and there will be no curbside or store access on the subject lands. The products will be transported by tractor trailers and unloaded onto small trailers and towed to the location to be stored. The average daily delivery would be 2 trailers per day, 5 days a week during regular business hours. In terms of the policy framework, under the Provincial Policy and Growth Plan, it identifies as prime agriculture areas are to be protected for the long term for agricultural use. However, considering the subject lands are incorporated into the rural settlement area of Fulton, where the focus for rural employment growth, the policies do not necessarily apply to the subject lands, although they are applicable to the surrounding lands outside of the settlement area, which remains agricultural. As such, the planning staff do not consider the proposed outdoor storage of the barrels to be an invasive use, since the actively farmed areas will continue and not affect the existing surrounding agricultural uses. The storage location is set back and will be buffered by the existing berm and behind the existing buildings, which can provide screening from the street view and the neighboring properties. In terms of the Niagara Official Plan, it speaks to the growing region and opportunities for growth, particularly as it serves to the needs of the rural residents and area businesses, such that they are adequate without compromising the character of the area. Furthermore, the region plan provides policies related to different opportunities for employment growth in the settlement areas. And because the subject lands were added to the Fulton Rural Settlement, it is envisioned to accommodate forecasted rural employment growth. In this regard, the proposal is limited in scale and can provide some localized employment with approximately 4 employees to be loading and unloading the barrels into their position. In terms of the township's official plan, it designates the subject lands as hamlet settlement under the official plan amendment number 62 and the furthest east corner as natural heritage system. However, the location of the outside storage is not in the vicinity of the natural heritage features and therefore should not be casting any impacts to any of them. Generally, new uses will not be permitted until such time as the secondary plan is completed, especially where there are opportunities to integrate new land for such things as employment, such as service commercial and light industrial, such as outside storage, and that it is examined to consider compatibility with adjacent low-density residential and other agricultural uses. Specifically, Section 18.4.1 of the official plan, it provides policies for temporary uses, which may be passed by council, authorizing temporary use of lands, buildings, structures for any purpose set out that is not otherwise permitted to a maximum of 3 years. Planning staff considers the proposed use as not being invasive and not expected to create detrimental effects on the surrounding area. In terms of zoning bylaw, the subject lands are zoned agricultural and environmental protection. The zoning on the property has not changed since the adoption of the official plan amendment 62. However, outside storage is considered an accessory use and permitted in the agricultural zone as long as it's in conjunction with a permitted principal use, that being agricultural. Since rain barrel storage or composters are not an agricultural use, the temporary use bylaw is required to permit this on a temporary basis. The location of the storage is not within the limits of the environmental protection zone, and therefore there are no concerns and adheres to those environmental regulations. The agent is requesting to use approximately 2%, as noted, of the total lot area. Although there is no actual structure or building being proposed, the product will use more than the maximum area allowed, being 1%. Of land greater than 10 hectares for outside storage, and therefore will require provision to set out the maximum area to 9712.45 square meters, or 0.97 hectares, 2.4 acres. Planning staff will be undertaking a 5-year official plan review, as well as the secondary plan for the expanded Fulton Hamlet settlement area, which is intended for rural employment lands. This application for temporary use is utilizing time until the official plan review and secondary plan process are completed, at which time a more definitive land use and zone will be contemplated, and this temporary use will be reassessed to confirm its appropriateness. Please note that at the time of writing this report and up to this evening, there has been no formally submitted public comments that have been received. In terms of comments from the building department, they offer no concerns, objections. From the fire department, they have reviewed the application and noted that it will be important that lanes are provided for firefighting access and request that the lanes are appropriate size, minimum 6 meters, and to ensure that fire apparatus will have access to all parts of the property. This can be incorporated into a temporary use agreement with the owner. Public Works has reviewed the proposal, and offers no concerns or objections. Conservation Authority offers no comments, and the Region of Niagara offered no objection and is satisfied that the proposal will not be contrary to any provincial or regional policies for forecasted rural growth. In conclusion, planning staff asks committee and council to receive the technical report for information, and a formal recommendation will be submitted at a later date when all consideration of comments are received. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to ask if our applicant or their authorized agent is present to speak to this application. Feel free. And thank you to our senior planner, Smythe, there. All right, so I'll just have you state your first name, your last name, your address, just for public record there, and then you can go forward and speak to the rest of the application.
My name is Larry Pomerantz from 17 Head Street in Hamilton.
Perfect, thank you, Larry. So whenever you're ready, sorry, go ahead. I think you just turned it off. Try now.
It's been a while since I've done this, so
okay.
Thank you for your patience. We have an application here, and I'd like to begin by thanking staff, Brian, Susan, and Garrett, for such a professional application. Tremendously pleased that there was no opposition from any point. To understand the application, I think it's important to understand the applicant. It's my first time here. I've actually been operating a business in West Lincoln for 10 years over on 20 Road, and I need more storage space. I have a business that's successful. It's growing when many other businesses are going under. And we currently employ 7 people at our current yard. We have another 8 people who work from home, and we're hiring. So we need land to store our barrels. The day that those barrels ship out, you would never know that they were there. They leave no impact on the ground whatsoever. For the applicant, I was born in Niagara Region. I grew up in Hamilton. I obtained a computer science degree from Guelph. I fell into the environmental field. I was the Earth Day coordinator, volunteer Earth Day coordinator for the city of Hamilton for 20 years. And now I'm here in West Lincoln to bring all that experience, all that knowledge, all that concern for the environment. I also am a founding member and the chair for the Hamilton Civic League that tried to get more people out to vote. Don't worry, I won't be starting one here. I'm sure you have a lot of people voting. But again, the application is 50% of it. The applicant is the other 50%. My intentions are very clear. There's nothing to be hidden here. It's a legitimate business. It's doing very well, and it's going through its biggest growth period right now. It really needs this land to store its products for distribution. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now I'll go to the public portion. Are there any oral or written submissions from anyone present in this meeting, either in person or Zoom, regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment? I must stress that this may be the only public meeting held with respect to this application. Therefore, if any members of the public that are in attendance at this public meeting would like to make comments and or provide a written comment, they should do so now. I'm going to start by looking to see if we have any new participants online here virtually, not seeing any. So now I'll turn to members in the gallery. Are there any? Okay, we got a few. So I'm going to start. I'll go right to left. So I'll start with this young lady here. If you could just take a step up there. I will need you to state your first name, last name, and your address for the record, and then you can go and speak to the application.
Okay. My name is Sandra Magnini, and I live at 9159 Regional Road 20. So I am right next door to the property in, okay. I just have a few questions. I just want to know what temporary meant.
Okay.
And exactly where on the west side. And the height, the 16 feet. That's something that I'm not quite happy with, the 16 feet. Other than that, I don't have any other problems.
Okay, perfect. I'll look at the staff. So we can't always give answers back right away, based if some stuff needs research, but I'll go to my acting CAO right here to see if they can provide any feedback for you at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can, excuse me, I can give answers, and certainly if we get in touch with each other, I can share the draft of the site plan that's proposed. But temporary means any sort of use up to 3 years. Council can choose any duration, 1, 2, 3 years, or even by month or whatever, up to 3. After 3, we have to go through this process again to get beyond 3 years. On the west side, the proposal is an area behind the barn, and we can certainly show you that. I don't know if it shows in the report very clearly or not, but it does. Okay, so it's showing in the report. But if you have more questions, you can certainly reach out to staff, and we can help you there. And in terms of height, the 16 feet as proposed is actually less than the height restriction for the agricultural zone. So it's in compliance with the height provisions of the zone as written right now. But that's what I can offer for the time being.
I think if I heard correctly, that maximum ceiling was around 32 feet.
Somewhere
so
there.
So it's about halfway within that allowable limit. Yeah. And, okay, so that covers that. Did you have any other questions?
No, that's everything. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so staying on the right side of the room for right now I know I saw another hand or two. Anybody else wishing to speak to this application? This may be your only chance to speak to this application, because this will likely be the only public meeting at this time. So feel free if you want to make a comment. Okay, don't worry. I've got this young gentleman here coming up to the front here. And so, again, sir, I'm just going to ask you to state your first, last name, and your address.
First name is William Lowe,
Okay, perfect.
9103 Regional Road 20.
Perfect. Thank you. And you can speak to
Okay,
the
what I
application.
want to know, since the berm was built next door to me, because that's my neighbor, my basement is flooded twice because the original watershed goes to the back of the property and there is a main creek that goes behind, which has never been cleaned out, and I've been there for over 50 years. And to have my basement flooded all the time, I don't appreciate it.
Okay.
Know what I mean? So if they're
blame
going to leave that, they've got to divert the water back the other way, because the berm was put on the trench that went between the two properties.
Okay. So I'll go to our acting CEO to see if he can speak to that.
So,
I mean-
through you, Mr. Chair, this is roughly the third time that I've heard the issue of a drainage concern. Where
Yes,
I understand
yes.
the water is now forced south as opposed to originally going north.
Instead of going to the back, it comes to the front.
So,
And there is, back there, a West Lincoln Road that is all grown up now with trees and everything, which was a main drainage ditch that took the water to the east. It's all grown in now, so nobody has looked after that ditch. And it's on township property. And at the back of his property is the same thing. That ditch is full. It should be dug out. I don't care who does it, but it should be dug out and go the way it should go.
Okay, so I'll let the director here just finish.
And right now, on the road that goes down from Fulton, the Fulton Side Road, there is a culvert there, and it's plugged, and it's full of water. So and the water is, there's another ditch, goes across the other way, going east. So the township is not looking after these culverts that the water should be flowing through.
Okay, so we'll let the director.
But there is a major problem with the ditches at the back of that property that should be cleaned out. I don't care if they got to take the trees down or what they do. That water is to go to the back of the property, not to the front.
Okay, and I hear you. So I'm just going to let our director finish with his explanation regarding the drainage, because I'm sure that's something that's going to be conditioned within the findings, but I'll let him kind of elaborate but we appreciate you bringing that information to us.
Well, I mean, I don't appreciate the basement being flooded either.
Well, I'm sure you don't.
And especially when the hydro goes off, because all you got is a sump pump.
Correct. Yeah, so I'll let the director just finish his explanation.
yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, the issue by the sounds of it, and this is, as I say, the third time I've heard this, is the fill that's been put on the area already. I don't think this use will make it any worse, but what we intend to do is work on a secondary plan. That secondary plan will look at drainage of the whole of the area and make some recommendations in terms of what the drainage should be for the area. So in my mind, it should be reverted back to what naturally should have occurred, and our recommendations of that study can certainly try and make that happen as part of the development of that area.
Because the drainage ditch at the back is on hydro property, I do believe, because they have an access there. They have a 300-foot right-of-way. Plus the major gas line is through there too.
Okay. Perfect. Have you been in touch with this gentleman before? Can we maybe coordinate something so?
I've been in touch with this gentleman on a different matter before,
Okay.
but certainly we can reach out and chat further, yeah.
So we're going to encourage you to reach out to staff, just so that we can see what we can address in the short term. But your comments have heard regarding this application. Just with some of the other things you brought up there, we want staff to kind of be as proactive as they possibly can in
Yeah,
the current standing, so you're not waiting for the whole findings before something's happening.
But as I'm saying, the ditch should go, the water should go to the back.
Yeah.
Because all the properties on the south side of the road, they used to have a little ditch like that. Now they got a 6-foot ditch with all this water coming the wrong way.
Yeah, no, that's not ideal.
No,
I hear you.
it's not ideal.
Get a little pond there. So anyways, I don't know if you have any other questions or comments
No,
beyond that?
that's okay.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to stay to the right side still. I will come to the left. Get this young lady up here, please. And I'll just repeat myself again. I just need your first, last name, and your address.
Rhonda Tuckett, 9058 Regional Road 20. I live right across the street from the property.
Perfect. Did you hear that? Okay. Hold on just one second. Do you need it one more time, or are you good? Okay, perfect. We're good. Thank you.
So they're saying 2 trucks a day and 2%. What is going to ensure that that is all that it is? What happens with this property? You know, there's been, so 2 trucks, what happens when it's 4, 5 trucks a day? When it's 2%, now it's 5%.
Okay, good question. Your mic's on already.
Sorry, I should have left that on. The 2% is an area of the property, and it's actually will be regulated by the zone category that's put on the land. It's a triangular shape that shows in the proposed application that can be regulated fairly easily because its size. In terms of the number of trucks, that's probably more a question, I would say, for the applicant. We can certainly build something into zoning too, but I don't know, Larry, if you have anything further to clarify on frequency of trucks.
Was there any other questions before we bring anybody up?
No, but I'll get on that water issue too.
Okay.
Okay, that's it?
Okay, that's great, yeah, and then
Okay.
we'll bring Larry up and he can answer anything to that.
Brian,
So-
it's 5% almost, 2.4
So,
acres out of.
so hold on, so I can't, so just for the record, we can't have, if you're gonna speak, you need to come up to the microphone, just part of the process. And Larry, would you like to be able to speak to that? Do you have any comments to add to what was just asked regarding that, if you just. Oh, your microphone's off, IT saying.
Try again. See,
Perfect.
Mr. Chair. These barrels are food-grade barrels, non-toxic, non-hazardous, made of a food-grade plastic, HDPE. They're generated at food processing companies. They're emptied out, rinsed out, and so there's only so many that can be processed by the food processing company. 2 trailer loads per day is the maximum. It's possible to get a third or fourth if they weren't able to process them the day before, but then it goes right back to 2 trailers per day. And with regard to the percentage, a set area has been created that represents approximately 2% of the property, and this application is to operate within that fixed area. So we won't be going beyond those borders.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
And then, sir, would you like to also come up and speak to this application?
I'll let the other person talk.
Okay, so we'll go, so everybody on the right's content for now? So I'll go to the left, I'll start at the back. Sir, I know you had your hand up, if you want to come up to, yeah, just come right up. Yeah, I'll just have you state your first name, your last name, and your address for the record, and then you can address the application.
My name is Alex Josic.
Oh, we got the microphones off, sorry. Yeah, so if you could just, once it's on, if you could just say that again. Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Perfect.
Okay, my name's Alex Josic. I live at 83 Mill Pond Road in Niagara-on-the-Lake. And I own the property adjacent to the subject property on Highway 20 there. And number one is, I'm just curious, who's the current owner of the 49 acres?
So I'll go to our director who could speak specifically to that. Do you know that offhand?
I believe the roll book still identifies Giovanni DeFlavio as the owner.
Okay, because Mr. Pomerantz told me he was the owner.
Told you pardon?
He told me he was the owner.
Okay, so.
I'm
is that a
confused.
possibility?
For us, he's the agent.
Yeah, like
The agent.
the documentation we have here recognizes him as the agent. So,
Where's the owner?
well, the agent sometimes are here on behalf of the owner. The owners don't always come out to some of these applications, so I couldn't speak to their specific.
Should agents not be legal counsel?
Not necessarily, not in
Yeah.
these situations. They're really just a representative on the individual. When an agent gets involved and they're kind of dealing with some of the design or some of the planning aspects, a lot of times they're going to speak more in depth. I'd say maybe less than half the time we see an agent and owner or the person who's part of the applicant be here, but sometimes whether it's a life circumstance, something's come up, usually it's the agent that will be here to speak to the specifics in the application because they're usually the most adverse for it.
Okay, no problem. I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, no worries, great question.
One thing I want to point out is the farmer that farms my property and the 49 acres, it's the same guy, Brad Snippe. He's been told by, I'm not sure, the owner or whoever, to not farm, he's not going to be farming the 49 acres anymore. So in this application, it says it's only a small percentage of the subject property.
Okay.
Well, if that's the case, how come the farmer's been told not to farm it anymore?
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to speak to that. That's not information that would be privy to us, so I don't know what discussions may have had privately between the farmers and the landowners.
Well, he's not farming it anymore.
Yeah, but I'd be recommending for you to reach out directly to that individual, because
Yeah, I know, he told me. So I'm just kind of wondering, is it really going to be 1 or 2% of the property?
Yeah.
And when you really think about it, like rain barrels, like, that's a lot of rain barrels.
Yeah.
Even on a couple acres, that's a lot of rain barrels. Is there a possibility that maybe other things would be going on the property?
That'll have to be reported, and staff will have to check up on that, which
Because
can be done.
I don't know about the commercial viability of rain barrels, but I know a big business in the GTA is dirt and dumping dirt. And 49 acres in that location, that's a prime spot for a lot of the dirt from the digs that are going on in the area. So I'd have a concern about that. Tying into what some of the other people were saying with the water and the grade and everything, and the amount of like non-drainage there, that's another key concern, which would be compounded by like whatever would be going on there. And just the unsightly nature of having a mountain of barrels. I mean, it's not really zoned for that, right? So,
Valid concerns, yeah.
so that would be key concerns of mine, right?
Well, and that's.
And the decrease in property value, like my aunt wants to build a house on the 1 acre that she has fronting Highway 20, and now she has to look at a giant pile of barrels. I don't think I'd have a problem with it if there was a building erected. Like usually when you have like a commercial operation that's that successful, they would erect a building, no? To like put their products in?
It's based on the nature of the business, possibly.
I would
yeah.
think so, right?
It's it really comes down to based on the nature of the business, right? So, no, valid concerns, valid comments. Do you have any particular questions for staff at this point, directly that we can assist with, or any other comments you'd like to provide?
I know in like Hamilton, when you have like M3 zoning, if you want to put anything else on the property, it has to be in conjunction with a building. So.
Is that something you can speak to there?
I think the best I can do through you, Mr. Chair, is to suggest that the secondary plan process will work through a lot of these details. This is meant to be an employment park, a rural employment park for uses that don't require a lot of services, you know, small water users or light water users and that kind of thing. So when we get into the policies and regulations of official plan and zoning for this area, that'll probably speak to a number of things like on-site storage and the number of buildings and whatnot. At this point, this is just a one-off until we get to the point of dealing with secondary plan, so the detail's not there yet. That's yet to come.
Okay.
So maybe we should wait.
Well, but that doesn't happen until the recommendation comes forward. So this is all part of the process. So whatever decision is made tonight is only a decision based on a technical report, which is required to even have any of that reviewed and looked at from staff. So what we vote for tonight is going to be just whether or not this gets to a technical report, at which point that's where staff then takes it in and does their research, and then all the other steps follow. Any decision tonight doesn't automatically make it happen. That comes at a later date. Tonight's just kind of like day one of this whole process in terms of how council gets involved. So yeah, so you can't really get it started or have it reviewed until you have this conversation, this information gets pulled together. Staff takes that into consideration. They come back later on saying, here's our recommendation. Based on everything we heard, these are going to be our terms. And then that's how they proceed forward to each step of the way. So anyways.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So before I come back to the right side, I'm going to just finish off on the left side. So sir, I'll have you come up. I will get to everybody, I promise. Just trying to keep track here.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, my name is John Vukovic. I'm at 9480 Regional 20. I am a tenant farmer directly across the south side. Since I've been farming the land, the previous owner filled the land up, changed the watershed, and forced it to the south side. There's two things I'm really worried about. Now, you have this, you know, food-grade plastic, it's plastic, so what happens if there's a fire and all the contaminants go across the road and on that land? And I have a valid reason for this because my liability is on that land because I farm the land. So what provisions do you have in play for in case a fire happens?
Okay, so I'll go to our director here to see if he could speak to any provisions do we have anything that specifically speaks to that scenario?
Through you, Mr. Chair, certainly at the time of the secondary plan, there'll be some policy written into the development with respect to fire cisterns or whatever will be required for that area. There's nothing yet, but we can have discussions with the fire chief before a rec report comes forward specific to this use.
So what that means is, so tonight, a tech report gets passed, all that is it kind of starts things. During that process, that's when staff will be consulting all the departments, including fire, to see what requirements or what certain criteria will be required to address those concerns. So you expressing that concern is going to be part of that consideration, and basically that conversation will now take place when staff starts communicating with all their departments. So that will be addressed. It won't be addressed tonight, but it will be addressed in the rec report.
But my main concern is how you can contain the water flow from continuing through the road to the property, which is now on my liability.
Yes.
So now, I need, like, as a tenant farmer and as, landowners around, they're gonna need some kind of a liability break from that situation in case something does happen.
Absolutely.
All right, like, we're talking, we want to talk business, we're talking business now. Liability issues, watersheds, and now if you guys are talking about diverting the water back to normal, the previous owner should be paying for all the alterations because he created the watershed change. And it shouldn't be on the taxpayer dollar.
Yeah, and I don't believe, that will probably, if I had to guess, I can't speak necessarily to a recommendation board I don't have before me, but usually and historically, we've seen it where that's the requirement on the applicant to do before it could be accepted or passed at council, or as part of the passing of it would be that stipulation. So that is not something that's going to turn around and the township's necessarily going to say, we're going to pay for this and make this right.
Or not,
usually on the applicant, if that's addressed in the process.
Or it doesn't go into a miscible drain, and then we have to maintain the miscible drain.
And that's the next stage. That's what staff has to go and they look at everything. So the information you brought forward now is on the radar, and that will be reviewed of how to kind of manage and mitigate that. So that will be addressed in the next steps, basically.
We're considering about all aspects of everything. I don't mind business in the area, but you know what? We got to look at this consideration of liabilities, everything else, drainage, which has been altered, and you know what? Nothing has been done about it. So now,
Here we are. Yeah.
here we are, you know what I'm saying?
No, I understand completely what you're saying, and so that will now be captured and reviewed. I'll go back to our director.
Actually, going to do this in reverse if that's possible. I want to ask John a question.
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Lowe mentioned drainage at the back, and I was taking it from his comments that there might in fact be a municipal drain back.
There is.
Is that correct?
There's a full municipal drain, but there is also a normal drain, ditch going to the municipal drain, which it should be going into.
Do you know the name of that drain?
There's a Fulton municipal drain, then it goes into the Fortino's municipal drain. Okay, but now it's being altered to the south side, which is causing major land erosion, and then it's filling out the creeks, and then next I have to deal with Conservation Authority, then blah, 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 and blah, 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 and blah.
Yeah, so
Okay.
as we work through the secondary plan, we'll make sure that's all reviewed and evaluated so that we can return it back to its original plan.
But I don't, as landowners in the area too, I have a lot of lands in that area too. If I don't want it to continue to be a huge municipal drain, then I'm taxed every time that anything has to be done to it.
Yes.
You know what I'm trying to say? Like,
Oh, absolutely. And that
I'm
will-
going through it with the Fortino drain already right now, right? So,
Okay, yeah, and that will definitely be part of staff's report there in addressing how to manage that. And again, just because we go through the technical report doesn't necessarily mean everything gets recommended. There's certain hurdles in the way that certain criteria need to be met. Once those are met and satisfy staff's requirements, then that comes back later and it can happen. That recommendation comes to council. So I suspect there's gonna be a lot of requests, specifically hearing tonight, related to drainage and the implications it's having on the nearby residents. I feel like that's gonna be number one on the radar of what that looks like before they come back to council with recommendation.
all I worry about is my liability on the property I'm farming, and if something does happen, then
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
liable,
Gotta protect yourself.
for somebody's profit, other profit,
Yeah.
I want to make this loud and clear.
Yeah, no, I heard you. So do you have any other questions not related to that?
No, I'm done.
Okay, perfect. Appreciate the feedback and input. Staff's heard that, so we'll make sure that's addressed. And feel free to reach out to staff if you have anything else you want to add, even after the fact or beforehand. If you want to bring something to the radar sooner, please establish that communication as soon as possible. That way, we can kind of make sure that stuff's part of it.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, so I'll have someone else come up on the left side there. Perfect. So again, I'll just have you, I probably sound like a broken record at this point, but first, last name, and your address, please.
Good evening.
Oh, you might have turned the mic off. I think we usually just leave it on, so that's probably everyone's hitting it off on the way out.
It is, hello?
Yes, we're good. I'm getting the thumbs up in the back.
Good evening. My name is Lillian Josick, and I am the owner of 9031 Regional Road 20. I live at 31 Catalina Drive. My parents own the properties that my nephew spoke about, and I plan to build a house on that property and make West Lincoln my home. I'm a retired school teacher, so I was very much into recycling, and I'm not against recycling, but I am against what I perceive as a potential problem. The people before me brought to your attention things that I'm concerned about as well. How many trucks are going to be coming a day? We were told 2, then it might be 3 or 4 if they didn't make a run. Well, to me, I see that as a potential threat. And I did visit the property that Mr. Pomerantz rents, and I was not impressed. It did not look neat to me and tidy. And building a house out there, I do not want to look out the window and see a pyramid of rain barrels. I have concerns too about the potential fire. And I have no problem if they were to be in a building of some sort, contained. Then they would have more control over it as well. He says it's a booming business. He's got 7 people employed. He has a few now, but it's gone up to 7. It'd be nicer if it were more for him. But I'm concerned. And I'm concerned about the drainage as well.
And is there any questions or comments directly for staff outside of drainage and liability?
Headache.
Oh, no.
I just want to know the answers to the same questions that the people before me have put forth.
Okay. So those will be addressed in some capacity when a future report comes to council or committee, whenever that happens. And again, as you probably heard me repeat myself, you're gonna hear it again later, to make sure that you're up to date, you're gonna email our township clerk, jdyson@westlincoln.ca, and that way, whenever a decision does come, you will get that email. If you provide your address, you get notice. So this is a good way of staying in touch, and so that you don't miss whatever comes down the road.
But like I said, sir, I did visit the site where he said that he's renting, and it wasn't neat and tidy.
Okay, yeah.
And so I don't want to see that in my neighborhood, my future neighborhood.
Understood. So,
Thank
excellent. Thank you. So hold on, before I come back to you for a second time, I just want to get through everyone first. Anybody else on the left side? Not seeing any. I'm going to go back to this gentleman who's been waiting patiently here on the right side.
So, sorry. I was just concerned
So I'm going to stop you.
Sorry, Peter Josick.
Perfect, thank you. And
Brian knows me. We've had properties in
that's
Fulton.
fine. It's more for a clerk. Can I just get your address
For the
as
last
well?
50 years, we've been paying taxes, we're good.
If I could just get you to state your address for a clerk as well.
Yes, sorry, 3 Early Down Court, Stony Creek.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So, just a concern, Mr. Pomerantz actually phoned me too, along with my sister, and he wanted to buy land. And I didn't answer because we weren't selling it. We've had the properties for 50 years. And he I don't know what he said. He misrepresented things. He was going to buy things. And so I didn't do anything. But recently, since we have this meeting, I did go out to, what is it called? Barrel, what, his business?
Sorry, what'd you
What
say?
is it? Water barrels?
Okay, yeah, you have the water barrels, the rain barrels, whatever?
Water barrels.
Water barrels?
Okay. So I did. I Googled it. It's on 20 Road. So we went down. We've never been down that particular thing. It's actually near South Grimsby 18. We stopped, me and my wife, and we were wondering, where is it? Where is it? You know, we did, and we drove past it. We came back. Oh, okay. So where it is, it's in the dump. It's in the garbage dump. The business is in the garbage dump, you know, and that's what it looks like. Yeah, yeah. So I was kind of, you know, but I didn't go through there because it says no trespassing. I didn't have any garbage. And apparently, they had a whole bunch of metal cars. If you go to that dump, there is a huge pile of metal cars. Yeah. So that's what it looked like. So my concern is, all these years, we pay taxes. We eventually, my sister wants to build a house. My daughter, I gave my lot to my daughter. My son has a property there. We're trying to do decent buildings. And Brian knows, my son did a very decent building, right, Brian? Very decent, one of the nicest in that area. So we are concerned about this type of thing. You know, like I'm terrified when I saw that. I didn't pay attention to it right away because I wasn't serious in, you know, I'm not selling. So that's what he wanted to. He wanted to buy actually land or whatever, but apparently he didn't. He's just renting. And so he's using that. So that's the concern, you know, and we're for progress, you know, and we're good people that pay taxes for all these years. My parents bought it in the 1969, the properties, all that, you know. There was a 34-acre farm, which now is more parcels, thanks to Brian. You know, we were told that we could divide it.
Okay.
So we're very much concerned about what's going up, and I don't want to see 16 feet of barrels in front of a very nice house, you know. And there's also very nice houses on South Grimsby 18. Very nice. I think those people should be here being concerned, if you can at a distance see the barrels. Here at the entrance, you can see the barrels in the dump. They're in the middle of the dump. So that's what the business is. Okay?
Nope,
Thank you.
appreciate your feedback there. Staff
Thank you
will
very
take
much.
that under consideration. So, sir, I'll bring you back. I just get it, because I'm not doing something a little unorthodox. Once you speak, you're supposed to move. Yeah, if you want, you can drop that off to the clerk here. But I'm just gonna give you 2 minutes, okay? So come back up. I'll just, again, just for the record, you don't have to give your address. I'll just say, have you restate your first name, just so they have it captured in the notes. But if you just, all right, perfect. Well, let's have, sorry, you can just hand it to Brian. He can, oh, I see you got notes there. Thank you. All right,
Is
sir.
this thing on? Oh,
Yes,
okay, cool.
it's
Yeah,
still on.
it's, my name's Alex.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back and kind of like understand, so you have this large acreage. The farmer's been told to leave. He's not farming it anymore. Now I have this application where they want to have multiple trucks going in and out. What's to prevent dirt from being brought in to the property, dumped, and kind of, you know, put there? That's a big business in the GTA. You know, 49 acres, you could have tens of thousands of loads at $100 a load. That's millions of dollars. I'm just saying, what's to prevent that from happening with this application?
Okay, so
Because if I was a businessman, that's what I'd be looking to do. If I wanted to make something off that kind of property.
Okay. I'll go to our director.
Okay, so in answer to that, after all of the fill happened on the property next to this and partly on this property, the township put together a site alteration bylaw which requires council approval for any large fill operation. And quite frankly, unless it's to improve the land in most areas for agricultural purposes, I don't think you would ever get support of this council. So if any eyes see trucks entering that property, call the township and bylaw will be on top of them right away. And we've had some assistance in that regard in the past already, so.
Yeah, no, I'm just curious because I just don't, like, a rain barrel, like if I need a rain barrel, no offense, But if I need a rain barrel, I could just make one myself. I don't see something that's in such demand that you would need so much traffic, like day in, day out, barrels going in and out, if you know what I mean. That's just what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
It just makes sense to me, right?
Can't speak to the business, it's not my business, but everyone's got their business there, so if that's a model that works for them, I get it. But we hear what you're saying.
You know what I
That will
mean?
be captured.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it. Yeah.
Thanks, Alex. All right, so Larry, I'll have you come on up. Feel free to address any comments or questions that are out there.
Absolutely, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. This evening, we heard from Mr. Lowe, we heard from the Joseph family, and also Mr. Snippet. I heard issues about drainage. The property is what it is right now through a secondary plan. I'm sure that drainage issues will be resolved. Whether a rain barrel is sitting on that property or not, it would not be affecting any drainage issues. It was interesting that Alex Josek, who was just up here prior to me, said that if he was a businessman, well, he is a businessman. And for the purpose of transparency, he has approached the owner of this property to try to purchase it, and his plan was to build self-storage units on this property.
Okay. So I get where you're going with. If we could just kind of try to steer away from hearsay and assumptions or anything, even if you heard it right from them, I think it's important that if we stay focused on the application here,
Certainly.
it just takes us out of that area of, none of that stuff would be brought into consideration of hearsay anyways.
No.
We have to focus on what's before us,
Not a
and
problem.
staff has to do their
So
due diligence as well.
On the issue of concerns about fire, we've been operating for 10 years in Smithville and have not had a fire. And in fact, storing barrels in a field is the safest thing to do because there's no sources of ignition. There's no wiring that can go cause a fire or anything like that. Short of a bolt of lightning, nothing's going to cause these things to ignite. Fire, we had drainage. Unsightly, this property has a very large berm, and the sides of it are very high. So everything is going to be hidden between the berms and the building. Nothing will be seen from the road or from the adjacent properties, not even from the back. There's a very tall berm all the way around that's carved out in the center. So the issues about sight lines and things like that really will be resolved that way. And the product will not be stacked higher than the tops of the berm. Just want to see if there's anything else in there. And one of the gentlemen held up a picture of a property that I happen to be renting. There are 3 or 4 other businesses on that property, scrap metal, car recycling, have nothing to do with my business. I'm not even bringing my whole business to this property. I simply need a place to store finished product for distribution. It's as simple as that.
Okay, perfect. Now, I do have to still go to committee. They may have questions, so you don't have to go too far there. This is just the public portion. So
very good.
I'll ask you to hang tight there. At this point, I have to read my thing. I'll just go back to the gallery one more time. Anybody else wishing to speak to this? Okay, I'm going to move to committee. So I do ask that any members of committee have any oral written submissions on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. Please note that members of committee must make their comments now, as the OLT may not consider comments made at any other council and or committee meeting. Any member of council wishing to speak now is to mute the microphone, and then when you finish, I'm going to tell you to mute yourself. So I saw Councillor Chichek's hand go up, then I have Councillor Rayner, then I have Councillor Trombetta in the queue there. So Councillor Chichek, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I have a few questions, and some of them might be to Mr. Pomerantz, others might be to our staff. And I guess my first question is, the current site that Mr. Pomerantz runs, not that far away from this one, can you tell us how many people you employ there?
Currently, we have 7 at that location.
And at the new site, how many would you be employing?
Most
Through
of-
you, Mr. Chairman, sorry.
Most of the time, there will be no people there. It's only when a truck comes in to be unloaded, which takes about an hour. So you're looking about 2 hours a day, 4 people would be there to unload, then they head back to the other location.
So I know I might be sorry that I asked this question. I'm not sure whether it's to Mr. Pomerantz or through to one of our staff, but how is the current property zoned?
The current property, I'm not exactly sure, but I believe it has an industrial zoning to it.
I think I'd rather.
So I'll go to our director to see if he's familiar with the zoning.
I'm not off the top, but I suspect most of the use that's there is grandfathered, because I know it goes way back in history. But I'll do some digging as we're talking here.
Okay, thank you.
Taxed as farm,
I-
currently maybe
So-
being
so-
taxed because it was farmed. But apparently the Flavia won't be farming it now, I don't know that.
Okay. So again, I'm gonna have to express, just for procedural purposes, comes back, I mean, if people are talking from the gallery, it can't be captured. So I do appreciate you trying to contribute, but again, we're gonna have to, if you want to speak, I'm gonna make some acceptances, but it needs to be done appropriately.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so I guess through to one of our staff, and I mean one of our staff because this is our bylaws, is I understand the 16-foot height of this structure of bare, I was looking for the right words, for these types of units. Those usually refer to something that's fastened to the ground. It's usually a building or a windmill or something that starts with the ground. And now we have a whole bunch of units that are going to be sitting there. And I wonder what happens in a 120-mile wind. I can make the point. I'm sorry. I don't want to get cut off because I'm being interrupted. So what happens if there is high winds or anything to these barrels that are a pile? So are we going to be looking for, is that something we can control with required fasteners, or is it something that Mr. Pomerantz should answer because he's got a solution? What are we doing? Because I know that I sometimes get stuff that started about 5 kilometers up the road. And I appreciate the delivery, but we usually like to give it back.
So if I can, I'm gonna go to Mr. Pomerantz first to see, do you have any information in relation to like what the weight or the ability of wind speeds or anything like that that could indicate like how secure they're going to be, or what your plan has been at your other properties to ensure that there's no extra risk or liability as these becoming mobile?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. If you put your fists together, and without any pressure, you can slide them back and forth. These barrels are nested in between each other. If you push your fists together, you can't move them. They lock in together that way because the barrels on top fit in between the grooves of the barrels below. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the property that I'm at also has a berm all the way around it that keeps them all in place. So I've been there for 10 years and we've had strong winds even this week, and we haven't had any issues with barrels blowing around. Just the environment, the berm, and the way that these things sit together, nested or in the grooves, holds them all together.
Thank you for that answer. And further to that, Mr. Chair, that kind of leads me to where I wanted to go. But in fact, the berm around the future property has been discussed, and it may come up as an element of regrading or a plan for the secondary plan review that's imminent. So that's the reason why I asked what is there. My next question was, Mr. Pomerantz suggested that, or said that these products are food-grade containers. Are they modified on site, or do they come fully finished? That's my question.
Would you be able to speak to that?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, there will be no modification done to these barrels on this site, none whatsoever.
So are they used food-grade containers is what I asked?
They are repurposed food-grade containers.
Okay. Hold on. So my next question, Mr. Chair, and maybe to our staff, is if Mr. Pomerantz is a tenant and anything destructive occurs on the property, who and what do we chase as a tenant with a business on the site? Outside storage being that one, we would have no securities because there's no buildings going up or anything. But how is it that we go after any kind of remediation should there be any kind of remediation that's required.
Great question. I'll go to our director.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the agreement would be with the landowner because that's who we can actually register against title and all of that. So there's a number of situations that happen like that. It'd be up to the landowner to then have some subsequent agreement with his or her tenants.
But how would we get that agreement and know in advance that any of these worries, whether it's the fire and the fire water getting under the culvert, et cetera, how would we be able to ensure that the owner of the property has taken care of that without an agreement with the landowner?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we normally don't worry about that because our agreement is binding with the owner, and if the owner fails to live up to obligations, then he is the one that is taken to task, court, or whatever that might be.
So everything that Mr. Pomerantz is doing to alter the zoning would require the knowledge and/or informed decision-making and permission of the landowner as he's altering the zoning for the site, not owned by him.
That's my
I
understanding.
just wanted to get that out there.
No, that's good to know.
Okay, so I guess, okay, so I wanted to know where Mr. Pomerantz, through you, Mr. Chair, where he has a business in Smithville. Because Mr. Pomerantz did make that statement. I've had a business for 10 years in Smithville.
So it's, through you, Mr. Chair, the property is 9093 20 Road.
West Lincoln.
It's
West
Caister
Lincoln.
Center, it's Smithville.
Okay. So we're talking about the same property. I just wanted to know if there were two businesses and if I should be aware of both.
Oh, I see. Yeah, good question.
Understand? Yeah, but he said Smithville. So, Mr. Chair, I truly want to listen to my colleagues and to everything else because the main thing I've heard from our staff is that the municipal drain or drains and the secondary plan, which is imminent, are two things that we have to pay very close attention to and ask me, with the number of times they've been brought up, whether or not we should be looking at the appropriate time to something less than 3 years for a trial of this kind of use on this kind of property and ensuring that the owner and everyone is compliant in the work that they're doing. Because I know that we have site alterations, so I'm not worried about the dirt coming in. I think we've got enough people watching this, but I am worried about anything and everything else. So I think at the appropriate time, we would be talking about something less than 3 years, but that's still subject to the comments of my colleagues.
Okay, perfect. Before I go to anyone else, I do have the director that wanted to provide a quick comment to one of your questions or comments, so I'll go to our director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, the zoning of 9093 20 Road is A5. So that's an agricultural zone with an exception, and the exception permits a salvage yard.
So, Mr. Chair, that led to my question about if it's agriculture in nature, we know we've had many people who have been constrained into the type of facility or to the operation that they can have, and the limit of employees is 2 plus the operator, I believe. Would that hold true on this property that is the current site? And I have a reason for asking that.
I would say no.
It is not subject to that restraint?
No, through you, Mr. Chair, I don't believe so. It's allowing for salvage yard provided that no residential use shall be permitted. I think this is a complete exception from the agricultural zone. It's a grandfathered use.
Okay, because I don't want to see that they're currently in breach of the zoning, leading to would there be a breach in the zoning should we make this exception in our deliberations. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for the comments. I'm going to go to Councillor Rayner, and then I have Councillor Trombetta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've had a constituent from the Fulton area contact me, could not be available tonight, and had some concerns. The number one concern was the temporary, with Councillor Chichak had some comments about, which made a lot of sense, that how are we going to control this, how are we going to regulate it, how are we going to monitor it, and maybe we shouldn't be going with the maximum, like the director of planning mentioned that temporary means up to 3 years. Well, maybe this thing should be a lot less than 3 years to ensure that if this is going to go through, that it's meeting all the points that we need as far as under the regulations and controls of the township's bylaws. That's the first thing. The second one, Mr. Treble mentioned the berm and that part of that massive amount of dirt that was hauled onto that property also falls onto this property. The gentleman came here and mentioned about the drainage. I believe through this gentleman that called me today, who's been a lifelong resident there, that the water always flowed north. I believe this gentleman here said to the back, and I believe he's referring to the north, and it's flowing now in the absolute opposite direction, crossing 20 Road, and as John mentioned, I believe flooding the property over on the south side. So through to Mr. Treble, you're doing a secondary plan, but there's a couple of things that I think is extremely important because of the fact that they have destroyed this field and put this mountain on this land. They have altered the drainage and has affected people's flooding basements. They've affected the agricultural areas across the road. Through that secondary plan, Mr. Treble, can that be addressed? But the other concern I have is that dirt that was hauled in before we finally got that site alteration by a lot of cease and desist what was going on there, we don't know what was in those trucks. So the next question I have to Mr. Treble, part of the secondary plan, can it also be monitoring through the MOE that water leachate that's coming off that mountain to ensure that the water that's going into the natural waterways and streams in the area is not contaminating it?
Through you, Mr. Chair, what I can do, or what staff can do, is reach out to the Ministry of the Environment. I know they've been on site on multiple occasions in the past. I don't know what they can share with us, but hopefully they can share some information with respect to water quality. They were called to the site more than once, I know that. And certainly, as part of the secondary plan process, we can investigate the best way to handle or contain issues of concern if there are any. So let us do some research as part of the recommendation report. We can speak to a little bit of that. I think it's probably more secondary plan based than temporary use based, but we'll investigate.
Okay, thank you.
One other thing, Mr. Chair, if we could, through Mr. Treble, the gentleman that spoke, that's been there, a lifelong resident, also mentioned that there is an open road allowance, a road of some kind down there that is grown in with trees, and it used to be a drainage area. Is there any way the township can go down there and inspect that to see if that may be part of the cause why it's backing up and flowing south instead of north? Is there something we can do from the township that's on township property that this waterway crosses that we can at least evaluate? He also mentioned there was a big culvert, I believe, going down Fulton 50 Road that is blocked. Are there things we can check now to kind of mediate the situation until that secondary plan can come into effect and address it entirely?
My thought is let us do some research and investigate and report back. I think probably it's beneficial for all. I don't know, Mike, you've got staff that can probably go and take a look at things, so.
That would be appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, so right now, we'll leave that in staff's hands and they'll look into that.
Staff has to investigate.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to move to Councillor Trombetta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do got some questions. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Pomerantz. You did apply for a 3-year temporary usage of this property, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm just going to be kind of frank. I'm not in favor of a 3-year temporary use for the property. And it's not because of your business. This committee, in the past, we've given out longer temporary uses and they don't comply. And then afterwards, trying to get someone to comply in 3 years where they kind of disregard the municipality, disregard the issues of the residents is a problem for me. Not saying you're going to do that. I'm just saying what we've experienced in the past. So where I stand, giving out a 3-year temporary permit for someone to comply to do something is a little bit long. Again, I've had this committee's had many businesses along Highway 20 where we've had residents, that we've actually approved and they haven't complied. And again, things come up, businesses go to astray, people have things in their personal life, things don't just work out. And on top of that, it puts a lot of pressure on this committee and this council. I do feel some of the concerns of the residents, again, because they do have concerns, but again, if you give a 3-year term, their concerns might be forgotten in 3 years, where if you shorten that term, like some of the members of this committee have kind of mentioned already, it kind of gets us to monitor if you are going to comply or if you are going to do something properly. Not saying you won't, but we need to have some protection for our residents when it comes to these things. I've seen the 20 Road property. I know it's kind of changed hands over the years. I know it's been up for sale, that property. I've had complaints about that property, about the you know, the look. I know that you're not the only business in there, but there are some concerns about that property as well. So that does give me concerns, especially about moving to another property. Again, I feel that, you know, the residents do have some concerns about drainage. That's always a big issue, especially with the big rainstorms that we have been getting. You know, we just got one, what was it, last week? That caused, you know, a lot of concerns that I got many calls. I also received calls on this file this week as well. So, you know, I'm a little reluctant, again, on the 3 years. I don't want to stop anybody. No one wants to stop anyone from having a business or not making a livelihood. What anybody does to make a livelihood, that's, you know, that's up to them. But, you know, I do have to, as a counselor, we do have to take the consideration of the residents. We do have to watch businesses that move or create a new property, because sometimes, again, it's not to you, Mr. Pomerantz, sometimes businesses say one thing to us and all of a sudden we get something else. So I'd like to thank the residents for the comments. They do go away, and I'd like to thank you, Mr. Pomerantz, for your presentation, and we'll have to, this is just a technical report tonight.
That's all it is, yep.
That's all it is. There's no decision tonight, but I need our comments for the record and how we feel about certain things that are getting in this municipality. Thank you.
Perfect. I have Councillor Broderick, then Mayor Ganan.
Thank you very much, and through you, Chair, to Mr. Pomerantz. There was a verbal presentation tonight that indicated that you possibly could be the owner of the property. Our report indicates that you are the agent. Are you the owner or the agent of the property?
I am not yet the owner. I hope to be the owner, and we're working through that process, but I'm also waiting to see the outcome of the secondary plan.
Okay. That was the clarity that I was hoping to receive. I think that any of us driving past that property for the last 30 years or so has seen it, you know, go from, you know, a relatively disheveled looking building to even more so now, and it becomes a bit of an eyesore for that area. You know, I think that, and when I look at the 20 Road property, it also looks, and I know you're not the owner of that, but you can see the rain barrels as you drive, you know, at the foot of that driveway, and multiple other things that are stacked around that we want to respect the residents that live close by and to make sure that the area is neat and tidy and presentable for, you know, the people that live close by as well as the rest of us that drive by. So I'm hoping that as we go through this process, that, and if you are going to be the owner, that you will have more control over how that looks on the outside for the people who are living close by. And that's my only comments. The rest were already addressed by my colleagues. Thank you.
Councillor. I'm going to go to Mayor Ganan next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, just a comment and a question. But first of all, I'm glad that Councillor Broderick asked the question about who owns the property and so on. So I guess to you, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Pomerantz, is the current owner aware of this application? Is that something that you have discussed with the owner who currently owns the property?
Yes, absolutely. He signed the application as well.
Okay, and so is it the intention then that whether you purchase the property or not, you wish to have the rain barrels on that property?
For this temporary use term, we're waiting for the secondary plan. We want to be a participant in that secondary plan and collaborate in that secondary plan. But ultimately, the town will determine what happens in the long term. As I said earlier, the day I move that last barrel off the property, you will never know a barrel was on the property. It's just for storage of product right now. A product that I believe falls directly in the definition of a garden center. This is a product that any garden center would have, and it's no different. It's just more. That's all.
So thank you for that. So we've heard from residents, and I can very much appreciate, as several of the councillors have alluded to, the property has been in disrepair for a period of time where you are looking to move things. So I guess I'm going to actually go to my notes, because the technical report states very clearly that the 3-year period is to determine whether the business can grow and prosper and offer vitality to the area. And so obviously we all certainly hope that that's true. But my question is the what if. So if this business does not succeed as hoped, and planned for, then who carries the responsibility for clearing away any additional unsold composters, rain barrels, any other equipment that might come or go? In other words, although we're all hoping that your business is successful, if perchance the economy changes or something changes that's unforeseen now, whose responsibility would it be? If you don't own the property and your business fails, who cleans up the mess? Because the residents have been left that live in the area with several messes from past things going on. And I just think we need to be clear about, from your perspective, and then I think that's something that our director needs to look at as well, in terms of whatever is written into any kind of a future agreement, in terms of who's responsible for keeping the property tidy.
So the business is very successful. It's like
I
15 years and going strong and growing. The product that I bring in, I pay for it, I buy it, and I have to pay more for it than the recyclers are willing to pay for it. So there's always a market for plastics, but the best opportunity for plastics and the best thing for the environment is to repurpose those plastics, not to recycle them. It costs a lot more to recycle. So I'm buying these. I could easily sell them for less to major recyclers that would just grind them down and make them into raw material. So there will always be a home for this because it's a single type of plastic. Believe it or not, it's far more important when there's a large amount of it available, because then they can process all of that and turn it into other products, versus some sort of product like an automotive plastic that has many different types of materials in it. This product, whether a rain barrel or not a rain barrel, will always have a home. It's high-density polyethylene.
So you are quite certain then that there will not be leftovers? Should you move your business elsewhere again, or should it fail, that the residents are not going to bear the brunt of that?
Absolutely. At any time, I can take the lowest price out there, market price, and recycle it.
Thank you.
All right, so that's all. I'll go to our acting CEO.
Sorry, not to belabor things, but Madam Mayor did say that she wanted something from bylaw. So I guess what I was going to say was that we've had some complaints about this property in the past. I can't get into the details of them. But Mr. Pomerantz has actually been of assistance. I've reached out to him on a couple of occasions with respect to some of the issues on that site, and he's been of assistance to try and rectify a few of the issues there. So I'm optimistic that we're heading in a bit better direction, but there are bylaw issues for sure.
Excellent. Thank you. I guess as far as my 2 cents, most of everything's been addressed already, but I'll go to you, Mr. Director, in terms of on the table as when it comes to the 3 years that's currently being asked, if we can maybe in the report have it recognized, maybe we can have a couple options there for council to consider, whether it's somewhere between 1 to 3 years. I'll leave that to you to decide. The other thing is I would like some consideration, and I think, as we heard tonight, there's going to be an expectation that, we want everybody to get along here, right? We want good neighborship, we want all that stuff. But I think as a sign of good faith, I'd hope you'd be willing to support this in some capacity, and I hope there's ability to do it, but would there be a possibility to consider some kind of security, modest or not, just something that shows, hey, listen, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, I'm confident this is not going to be a problem. Could we consider that in the application process, just kind of a sign of good faith?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have done that before on at least one property I can think of through zoning. So staff will take that away and ponder how we can do that.
Perfect. I just think there's some value to that, and I hope you recognize a little bit of value to that as well, because I think it goes a long way. As you've heard, historically we've had some issues where businesses were not necessarily as successful as yours is, and they kind of got residents in West Lincoln got left holding the bag. So I think if we can kind of ease some of those concerns, address some of the other concerns, I think we can find a happy median here somewhere, I hope, and we'll see where things go from there. So, that being all the questions or comments, I got to go back to my report here, or my document here. So again, please be advised that only a technical report is being considered by the committee this evening, that a recommendation report will be forthcoming to a future committee and or council meeting. I'm going to pause right there. Again, for anybody who's here, reach out to our clerk, provide your email, provide your address, your phone number. You will be contacted when that report comes. But again, that way there's no concern that you've missed something. If you give all three, it's going to be pretty hard for you to miss that in the mail and email and whatnot. So then continuing forward, please also be advised that once committee and/or council has made a decision with respect to the zoning bylaw amendment, and if approved by council, a notice of its passing will be circulated with an appeal period. If you wish to be notified of the council's decision, please ensure that you email the township clerk, Jessica Dyson, at jdyson@westlincoln.ca. And then lastly, anyone who's interested in observing council and/or committee discussions about a particular bylaw should not solely rely on mailed notices and thus miss the opportunity to attend applicable meetings. It is suggested that you watch the township website for the posting of agendas to review items that will be discussed at council and/or committee meetings. The agendas for those meetings are posted on the township website after 4 p.m. on the Friday prior to the meeting. Additionally, meeting schedules are also posted on the township website for the public to view. And if you wish to receive these notices by email, it is suggested that you contact our clerk to advise this request, including your email, your mailing address, and your phone number. So, this public meeting with respect to this proposed zoning bylaw amendment is concluded at the hour of 8:40. I'd like to thank everybody for your participation. You're welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting. We are going to move forward with the rest of our agenda, but that is it for the public meeting. I think if it's all right, maybe we just take a 2-minute recess real quick, see if people want to clear out. So we'll hang tight, and I'll hand it back over to the
So welcome back, everyone. We've concluded the public meetings. They were a little bit longer. We haven't had 4 for a long, long time. We have no appointments this evening. I'm going to now ask, even though our gallery has cleared out, whether there is anyone who, under procedural bylaw section 10.13 subsection 5, who wishes to address anything on the agenda this evening that are members of the public. So we have still a couple of members of the public left. No one wishing to address anything on the agenda this evening. And Kevin, is there anyone online, please?
Not seeing any, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. That will take us then to our consent agenda items, and there are several. All items listed below are considered to be routine and non-controversial and can be approved by one resolution. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member requests it, in which case the item will be removed from the consent resolution and considered immediately following adoption of the remaining consent agenda items. So there are many. So the recommendation is that the following consent agenda items be and are hereby approved. So items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 be and are hereby received for information. And 2, item 10 be and is hereby received and the recommendations contained therein be adopted, with the exception of items. And I'm looking to members of council if they wish to have something listed. Councillor Broderick?
8.
Thank you. 8. Number 8. Anyone else? Councillor
6.
Chichok, 6. So we'll deal with 6 before 8. Anybody else? Okay, so then we are now looking then at items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 9.
And 10.
And 10 isn't on my list. Okay. And item 10 be it is hereby received. That's right. Okay, but not on the top one. Okay, so then we're looking then for a vote online for the consent agenda items as mentioned. We're looking at not at 6 and not at 8. Okay, so someone to move? Councillor Chichok, thank you. And someone to second that? Councillor Broderick? We'll see if this works this evening. Oh, gosh. Okay, so for some will. Councillor Riley does not have his yet. Oh, dear. Okay.
His isn't working either.
So, Mike.
You might have to turn it off. Loading, hang on, it might come. Yep, it just came down.
Okay, good.
That Canadian Tire Plants, it takes a while.
Okay, so that vote does carry, and Councillor Riley, your vote is verbal. Okay, thank you. So let's go then next, please, to the technical report PD number 6, which is PD-01-2024, application for temporary use zoning bylaw amendment for 9127 Regional Road 20, file number 1601-010-23. And Councillor Chichok, I presume you want to move that when we get to it.
I will move that at the appropriate time, and if this is it, just so that I can speak to it, yes, I will.
Okay, and then someone to second that, please, so we can get that out. Councillor Rayner, thank you. And Councillor Chichok, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I have heard an abundance of information this evening, and I know that we still do not have all the agencies commenting. But from the public perspective and from my colleagues, I do want to be very watchful on this particular report. And while we can look at an approval of an amendment to the zoning, temporary albeit, I would like to consider something less than 3 years as we move forward because of all of the concerns that have been brought together by the public. Unless they can be remedied in the follow-up with the applicant and the members of the public as well as council's concerns, I do want staff to take that into consideration as they move forward, and that's the only reason I brought it forward. Just listening to all my colleagues as well as my own concerns.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak to that? I think that pretty much was the nodding of heads even as we were listening to the discussion that was going on, Councillor, so thank you. Okay, so we're ready then to vote on number 6. Okay. Have you stopped updating, Councillor? No, it's still there? Okay, so
support.
Okay, and as soon as we have everybody, we'll see. Still saying in progress. Oh, and up it comes. Okay, so that resolution also carries. So that will take us to number 10, then under consent, which is the recommendation report C-01-2024, the approval of a multi-year accessibility plan, and Councillor Bradrick, you pulled that? No. 08, I'm sorry. That is my error. Information report PD-05, 2024, which is the results of the monitoring of 702 John Street property in Casterville. So, thank you. I presume you will move that?
I will.
And someone to second that, please? Councillor Chichok? And Councillor Bradrick, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Through you to Acting CAO, Mr. Trouble. I've kind of lost a little bit of the bouncing ball in regards to this property. Who currently owns the land? I noted in the report that it states as abandoned. Is there somebody on the roll for that?
Through you, Madam Mayor, there is somebody on the roll, a private property owner, but they have not been receiving or accepting mail for years, and so for all intents and purposes, it is effectively abandoned, but it is still in private ownership. I believe you'll probably see reports at some point about processes the township can take to grab a hold of the property and deal with it that way. But for the time being, it's in private ownership.
That was my next line of questioning was, where do we go from here in regards to, the ownership and how, if at all possible, can we, look at regaining some of the expenses that we've had over the years for that?
I'm going to suggest maybe Donna can assist with that question for 702 John Street. Donna.
Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Gannon, to Councillor Bradrick. When it comes to bylaw issues, there is procedures in place where bylaw fees and charges can be added to the tax roll. We've done that in the past. I'm not saying this property's like that, but when there are charges of that nature, we can add them to the tax roll.
So through you to, again, back to the acting CEO, has that been done in regards to this property?
Yes, this property has substantial charges against it. And I'm not sure we should have much more discussion probably without going into confidential.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all.
Okay. Any further questions, concerns about this? Okay, then we will be ready to vote on that as well.
Oh, really?
Okay, so vote is open. You were okay this time? Good. Okay.
Memories.
Okay, and so that also carries. Thank you. Okay, so under number 11, communications, Councillor Riley, support of the resolution from Tay Township regarding provincial cemetery management support request. The recommendation is that the correspondence received from Caitlin Johns, municipal clerk of Tay Township, dated December 21st, 2023, be received and supported. I presume, Councillor, since you brought that forward, you're willing to move that?
That is correct.
And someone to second that, please? Okay. Councillor Trombetta sort of nodded that he would. Okay. So, go ahead, Councillor.
There was really no discussion really required for this. It was stuff we've supported similar in the past. I wanted to maintain consistency in supporting other municipalities who are dealing with similar things that we are dealing with. So.
Well, and I appreciate that you brought it forward, because had you not, I was planning to get it on our agenda, simply because we delegated, actually, on this very topic at AMO in the past, and no doubt we perhaps will do it again next year, because other municipalities are picking up abandoned cemeteries as well at quite a cost. So I think it's certainly worthwhile being supported. So the recommendation then is that correspondence be received and supported. So that vote will come up, councillors, in front of you, if there's no further discussion. And that also carries. Thank you. So the second item under communications is Nicole Shime, committee member, resignation from the West Lincoln Santa Claus Parade Committee. And we need a mover and a seconder, but I will read the recommendation that the email received on November 29th, 2023 from Nicole Shime advising of the resignation from the West Lincoln Santa Claus Parade Committee be received with regrets, and that bylaw 2023-03, being the appointment bylaw for boards and committees, be amended to remove Nicole Shime from Schedule C, the West Lincoln Santa Claus Parade Committee. So, Councillor Chichok, thank you, and someone to second that? Councillor Broderick, thank you. Any questions or comments regarding this? Okay, then we will look for a vote. And that also carries. That takes us to 11.3. The name will sound familiar. This is Joel Shime this time, committee member, resignation from the West Lincoln Santa Claus Parade Committee. That the email received on November 29th, 2023 from Joel Shime advising of the resignation from the West Lincoln Santa Claus Parade be received with regrets, and that bylaw 2023-03, being the appointment bylaw for boards and committees, be amended to remove Joel Shime from Schedule C, West Lincoln Santa Claus Parade Committee. And so a mover for that, please. Okay, that's Councillor Riley. And a seconder. Who's talking? Councillor Broderick over the other side. Thank you. Okay. And all in favor, please. You will see that come up on your screen. And there is a third that follows in line with this. And as we read and it says with regrets, we sincerely do regret that and hope that when we figure out our new way of dealing with things that we're going to have all these people back as volunteers. However, 11.4 is Scott Crawford, committee member, resignation from the West Lincoln Santa Claus Parade Committee. The recommendation is again that the email received on December 2nd, 2023 from Scott Crawford advising of the resignation from the West Lincoln Santa Claus Parade Committee be received with regrets, and that bylaw 2023-03, being the appointment bylaw for boards and committees, be amended to remove Scott Crawford from Schedule C, West Lincoln Santa Claus Parade Committee. And so we need a mover for that. Councillor Riley, thank you. And Councillor Broderick again, thank you. Okay, and so please do speak to it.
So, thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to wait till the end there. There's three of them that are coming from the same committee that are resigning. And for anybody who's interested in maybe having a little bit of context as well as respecting some of their privacy at the same time, I just wanted to mention that with the parade committee, like there's a tremendous amount of responsibility, a tremendous amount of work that goes into running and organizing and facilitating and you know, between sponsorships to the beginning to end. And these three individuals have been part of it since the transition back. I think it was beginning of last term. When the new committee was established. And so I want to start by thanking them for steering us through those few years there, and their commitment to the community. I know it wasn't an easy decision for any of them, but life circumstances and being busy and work and other commitments, I don't think people realize how much work it goes to putting on a parade and how much it consumes of your life, and you kind of almost got to live, breathe, and eat it for that course of that whole process to get it to where it is now. And so again, I just want to take this time to thank them as they go on and take on probably new aspirations or just enjoy some freedom for a little bit there in terms of having time with their families that they kind of sacrificed throughout those years as we were organizing it. It's certainly a big responsibility and a big task for volunteers to take on, and they proudly and successfully did so. So I think it's worth noting that they'll be missed. We certainly appreciate their service, and I just want to thank them again for giving us some awesome parades, some to remember, people are still talking about, and getting us through some of those earlier years when we didn't have a parade the one year and we had to improvise. They were all a part of that as well, so thank you.
Yeah, they've been through some tough times, and so when I say with regrets, I sincerely mean with regrets.
Absolutely.
So we'll move forward, but thank you for that, Councillor. So we do need to vote on this recommendation as well, please. And that also carries. Okay, so 11.5, and I'm not sure who's going to speak to this, whether it will be, it's under the Director of Legislative Services / Clerk, which is Jessica Dyson, of course, but it also came through transit, so Councillor Riley, you might want to chime in as well. So the Niagara Region is looking for municipal representatives on regional committee, which is a transportation strategy steering committee, which is a regional committee this time. And so again, we need to appoint someone to that position. So the recommendation is that Councillor currently blank be appointed as the Township of West Lincoln's representative on the Transportation Strategy Steering Committee for the Niagara Region for the current term of council ending November of 2026. So first we need a mover. Councillor Trombetta, thank you, and a seconder. Okay, and Councillor Riley. And so I'm not sure who best to speak to that. Well, I'll tell you, because we have had a number of committees connected to this new transportation and this transit commission, and so we want to get it right. But quite honestly, this is about the fourth change I think we've made along the way through one way or another. So.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I can try to provide some type of background. It's not going to be a lot, but it is a new committee of Regional Council. So although we've seen a lot of these committees come forward with different names, it's not the same. So it's not associated with the Niagara Transit Commission Board or the Niagara Transit Commission Public Advisory Committee. So although they all look similar, it is another additional committee.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I can provide, I'm sorry.
Other
than the terms of reference.
That's more than many of us had before, because the names are always so similar. So, Councillor Wright, anything for you to provide?
Don't really have too much more to include other than, again, it's another committee that that's going to allow, more voices to kind of share input and how they're going to, deal with, the future of the organization. That's going to then, go forward and be presented to the board. And so, whether it's from a marketing strategy or just a strategy in general in terms of transportation, they're just looking for how that's going to be. Because I think when we look at what that board, the function of that board is going to be, at some point there's not going to be councillors on this board, right? That's I think the ultimate goal in the future is this is going to be an independent board and what that looks like. So this is kind of like a liaison between the region and the commission. So.
Thank you. So do we have, Councillor Trombetta, question?
Yes. Madam Mayor, to you or to Councillor Riley, is this board daytime, evenings? What's the timeframes of this board?
That's a great question. If it's anything like the other boards I serve on with them, it's usually around 3 o'clock is our meeting. I imagine this may be different. Off the top of my head, I don't recall, and they're being shared what time this board meeting would be happening, but my guess is it would just be a guess, so I wouldn't be able to commit.
So I don't want to.
I don't think it's going to be an after hours committee. I think it'll happen kind of between a 9 to 5.
Just curious with my schedule. That's why I was just wondering what the hours were.
But again, if it's a steering committee, that might be up to the committee. For example, the Women's Association, the committee that I sit on, we collectively decided on what time worked for the majority of people.
Correct.
This may turn out to be that same kind of thing.
Ideally, I was part of this committee first term when I joined council, and they did run at 1 or 2 p.m. in the afternoon, right? Which there was a bit of a conflict for me, Madam Mayor. So I was just curious if this was any different, because it's another was it a subcommittee of the committee or something like that, this one here, or?
Well, it sounds like this is a committee, a regional committee. I keep hitting that, sorry, a regional committee, and then but it is to give input to the region regarding transit issues. Yeah. So I think it's probably because it's new, as our clerk indicated, it's a brand new committee. Mm-hmm. So the parameters may not have been set.
Just as at the moment, like I said, until I get some further information, timeframes, that may be something I could think of later on, but not at this moment.
So I believe if it helps with any more clarity, at least my interpretation is it's similar to like your budget review committee that you have at region. So this is not necessarily a branch directly from the commission as much as it's a branch from the region.
From the region,
right?
Yeah, so it's a regional committee, not a transit committee per se. So.
Yeah. We have the advisory side, or the public side.
So, Councillor Trombetta is interested but not sure. Is there anybody else who's interested in sitting on this committee?
I could keep the seat warm until Councillor Trombetta, Jeremy could keep it heated. And I'd love to vote. Well, I don't want anybody to hear what I just said. But I'd hate for West Lincoln not to have a voice.
We need to have a voice, for sure.
And that's what's disturbing me. And, well, Councillor Witteveen is here, and he loves committees. But I don't see him putting his hand up. So in order, but he's shown a great example to us about the fact that West Lincoln does have a voice on so many committees because of his dedication to picking up the slack and making sure that we're well represented. And I guess that kind of guilts me into believing that maybe we should do something. But I do want to get my colleague to think about this very heartily. And if it turns out that it meets his schedule, I'll be happy to forego the pleasure myself.
It's fine, Madam Mayor. Councillor Chichuk could, keep the seat warm for me
You're
prior
good,
to me.
you're good for that until we get
until
further
we get
details?
further
Okay,
indication.
we do need to provide a name, but we can base the circumstances on that, as we say. We have a
Okay.
backup plan
Yep.
if that doesn't work. Okay, thank you. So then the recommendation will read, and you're still moving it, that's fine. And you're still seconding it, that's fine. Okay, so it now reads that Councillor Chichok be appointed as the Township of West Lincoln's representative on the Transportation Strategy Steering Committee for the Niagara Region for the current term of council ending November 2026. Okay, so that vote should come up then, please. And if we deal with that internally differently, that's fine. Thank you. It's actually good to have two offers, so thanks very much, Council. Yeah, we did. Okay, so that moves us to staff reports, which is a big chunk of this meeting as well. So 12.1, Planner Stephanie Pouliot, Manager of Planning Garrett Borma, and Director of Planning and Building Brian Treble. Recommendation Report PD-03-2024, Zoning Bylaw Amendment B and A Hayslip Farm Limited, and this was a file that we heard earlier tonight. So the recommendation report, that recommendation report PD-03-2024 regarding application for zoning bylaw amendment for 4813 Canberra Road, file number 1601-008-23, dated January 15th, 2024, be received. And two, that the application for zoning bylaw amendment submitted by Ben and Pam Heaslip, owners of 4813 Canberra Road, be approved in accordance with the attached zoning bylaw amendment with the site-specific regulations, and that council authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the necessary bylaws. And three, that no further public meeting is required for the consideration of this bylaw in accordance with Section 34, subsection 17 of the Planning Act. So I need a mover for that, please. Councillor Braderick, and a seconder. Councillor Riley, thank you. Okay. Any questions or comments about this? This was one of the items that we heard earlier in the public meeting. Okay, seeing nothing further, we're ready for a vote, I think. Still says vote in progress. Did everybody get the vote? Yep. Okay, that has passed. Okay, thank you. Did you miss somebody?
No, I think it was
Just a delay? Okay, thank you. So that resolution carries. So 12.2 is Senior Planner Madison Etzel and Director of Planning and Building Brian Treble, Recommendation Report PD-04-2024. This is the application for temporary use zoning bylaw amendment for 5909 Regional Road 20, file number 1601-011-23. And the recommendation this time is that the recommendation report PD-04-2024 regarding application for zoning bylaw amendment, temporary use bylaw, Sharon Moner and John Moner, Garden Suite application file, 1601-011-23, dated January 15th, 2024, be received. And two, that the draft bylaw included as attachment 4 to this report be approved with the site-specific regulations, and that council authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into a temporary use agreement for the Garden Suite, and 4, that no further public meeting is required for the consideration of this bylaw in accordance with Section 34, subsection 17 of the Planning Act. So I need a mover for that as well, please. Councillor Chichok, thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Broderick, thank you. Any questions or comments about that? This is, again, something we heard this evening. Weren't many concerns there, so I guess we're ready for a vote again, seeing none. Seems to take forever, doesn't it, when it says vote in progress? Oh, yours is not working. Okay, so it's Councillor Rayner that's not working, he says?
You hit it on the yes, it doesn't light up. You hit it on the submit, it doesn't light up. It's the screen died.
Okay.
Just
Okay. So I think we're good then. That also carried. Okay, 12.3 this evening is Engineering Services Coordinator Jennifer Bernard and Director of Public Works and Recreation Mike DePaula. Read the recommendation report PW-01-2024, and this is 7330 Concession 3 Road, land transfer declaration as a public highway. The recommendation is that report PW-01-2024, re 7330 Concession 3 Road, land transfer declaration as a public highway, dated January 15th, 2024, be received, and that a bylaw be passed to declare parts 1 and 2 on reference plan number 30R-16079 on Concession 3 Road as a public highway. And we need a mover for that, please. Councillor Trombetta, and a seconder, Councillor Chichok. Are there any questions or comments on this, or anything that the director would like to speak to? No? Good. Okay, we're good then. And your vote should be in front of you. Did yours come up, Mike?
Yeah, I haven't seen it from the
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Good. And we wait, that says vote in progress. Oh, that came up faster. Okay, that resolution also carries. I must say that when it declares it a public highway, I find that a little bit tongue-in-cheek. Just as an aside, all these public highways that are not the best roads sometimes. Okay, 12.5, Director of Finance and Treasurer Donna D. Filippis, recommendation report T-01-2024 to, sorry? Did I? Oh, I've circled it, but I didn't check it. Thank you, that's me. Okay, so Engineering Services Coordinator, again, sorry, Jennifer Bernard, and Director of Public Works and Recreation, Mike DePaula. This recommendation report is PW-02-2024, which is 8214 Concession 3 Road, land transfer declaration as a public highway, the one that I already was tongue-in-cheek about. I apologize. The recommendation is that recommendation report PW-02-2024, re 8214 Concession 3 Road, land transfer declaration as a public highway, dated January 15th, 2024, be received. And 2, that a bylaw be passed to declare Part 1 on the reference plan, again, number 30R-16164 on Concession 3 Road as a public highway. I need a mover for that, please. Councillor Riley, and a seconder, Councillor Trombetta. I shouldn't have been so cheeky about the public highway bit. I would have realized where I was. The vote will be in front of you. And that also carries. Okay, so now we're on to 12.5, and my apologies, Director of Public Works, for making fun of your roads. But I've lived here a long time. I know some of those roads. Okay, so moving on then to Director of Finance and Treasurer Donna D. Filippis, the recommendation report T-01-2024 to 2024 draft capital budget. The recommendation is that the recommendation report T-01-2024 regarding the 2024 draft capital budget dated January 15th, 2024 be received, and 2, that $500,000 of the projected 2023 operating surplus be transferred to the capital reserve. We need someone, please, to move that. Okay, Councillor Rayner, and a seconder, Councillor Trombetta. Okay, and so Donna, we will go to you. You have a presentation? Thank you. Okay. So this is the capital budget portion, which is what we're going to put the 500,000 towards, right?
So the next item is just.
The next one is different. Yeah.
Are you good with Zoom?
I was-
Good. When you're ready, Director.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Ganon, and thank you for council. We're doing things a little bit differently this year in terms of the 2024 budget. This is the first time that we've presented the capital budget on its own for council to review. The reason we're doing this is capital budget is such a large part of what the township spends their money on, and we just think giving council more time to review what's in the budget and more time to ask questions will just make sure that the whole budget experience is well-informed for council. Just to remind council that the first actual budget meeting will be on February 5th. It's a special council meeting to talk about the draft operating and capital budget. And the goal of staff is to have the 2024 budget approved by the end of February. Last year was approved in March, so our goal is to get it approved 1 month earlier. So this plan includes projects related to asset rehabilitation and renewal, investments required for growth and new development, and service level enhancements. These investments allow the township to continue to provide the current level of services, remain compliant with legislative requirements, and in some cases, enhance current service levels. So I'll just start a short presentation. Everything in this presentation is in the report as well. So we can't talk about the capital budget without referring to the operating budget. The reason being that two of the major revenue sources to the capital budget actually come from the operating budget. Those are reserve transfers and debentures. So we use reserve transfers from reserve funds to fund capital projects. In many cases, those reserve funds, the money going into them are from the tax levy. So the operating fund is what raises funds from the tax levy. The second item that is used as a funding mechanism in the capital budget is debenture financing. So that is similar to a long-term loan. It's the easiest way to explain it. The repayment of that debt, so we have to repay the principal and the interest, that runs through the operating budget, and in most cases is paid for through the tax levy. So I'm going to focus a little bit first on the 2024 capital projects and special projects that are within the 10-year plan. So just a reminder, capital assets include roads, bridges, buildings, vehicles, and equipment. We also include special projects in this plan, and that includes studies and software implementations. In 2024, the budget sees the largest investments in environmental services. That's also referred to as, waste and water services, where 50% of the 2024 budget is allocated. Transportation services will see the second largest investment. The 2024 projects within the capital plan total approximately $10.8 million. This is a significant increase to 2023 capital spending, which had an approved budget of $5 million. The financing of the 2024 projects will require, at this point, a 4.2% increase to the operating levy, which equates to just over $380,000 in additional revenue to the township. This chart provides a view of the 2024 capital projects by asset type. Most of these asset categories that we use are self-explanatory, but just to provide extra information to council, environmental services include water and wastewater mains, and land improvements may not be common for a lot of people, so I just want to clarify what those are. Those are betterments, site preparation and site improvements, other than buildings that ready land for its intended use. So in our case, example of land improvements are sports fields, fencing, tennis courts, landscaping, playgrounds, and parking lots. The 2024 capital budget relies on various revenue sources, with the greatest percentage being reserves at 43%. In addition, new debentures would need to be issued for the 2 large water main replacement projects, one on Highway 20 and one within the Killens, Barbara, and Brooks area of Smithville. Other revenue sources include 2 significant grants that we received from the provincial and federal governments. The province provides the OSIF grant, the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, and the federal government provides the CCBF grant, which is the Canada Community Building Fund. Another revenue source are development charges. Our current development charge bylaw will expire in July of 2024, and staff have been working with a consultant over the past few months to develop a new background study that will form the basis of the proposed fees and new bylaw. The capital plan, as you see it, has been developed using the current bylaw and background study. Staff anticipate that there will be changes to the funding of growth-related projects that are within this capital plan and will advise council of those changes once the information is known. So the next few slides are highlighting to council the 2024 projects. We've done it by department area, and we've also tried to break them down into 3 categories: rehab or renewal, growth-related, and then something that would be a service improvement. So the first category is general government, which includes corporate services. And the largest project here is the rehabilitation of the township office parking lot at $170,000. Second in size is the records management project, with the 2024 costs representative of the funding for the temporary position that has been allocated to this project. Fire services will have a budgeted expenditure of $155,200. The largest item in 2024 is the Station 2 SBCA, which stands for Self-Contained Breathing Apparatus, Cylinder Compressor, and Filling Station. At this point, that project is partially funded with development charges, but the percentage may change as we work with our consultant on the background study. We have 2 projects under the Planning, Building, and Bylaw Department, and both of these projects were the result of feedback that came from council meetings. The overall planned expenditure in transportation services is $3.9 million, almost $4 million, and this represents an increase of $769,000, or 24% over the 2023 approved budget for this department. Included in this capital plan is the hard topping of Vaughan Road from Welland Park Road to Heaslip, and it has a budget of $700,000. The township has completed 2 earlier hard topping projects, a portion of Concession 5 in 2021 and a portion of Vaughan Road in 2023. These projects relied on debenture financing. Now, given the current rate of interest, staff are funding this portion of this hard-topping project through internal borrowing. The intention is to borrow from the capital reserve and then reimburse that reserve through the tax levy through the unpaved road subfunction. I think it's in the best interest of the township to limit debenture borrowing right now, given the current high rates that we are facing. However, when it came to environmental infrastructure, we really had no other choice. But where there are choices, we're doing things a little bit creatively. Under environmental services, projects 1163 and 941, they total just over $4 million and are being undertaken as part of the Niagara Region's Phase 4 of the Highway 20 reconstruction project. At this point, they are funded through a combination of reserve transfers and debenture financing and development charges. So it's for these projects that we will anticipate issuing a debenture of $1.8 million in order to provide the necessary cash flow and funding for this project. And in this case, given that they're water projects, the debt would be paid back through the water reserve, which is funded through water rates that people in the serviced area of Smithville pay. We have one project under cemetery, and that's for cemetery software. There was an initial budget in 2023 for $5,000, so now the total budget for this software would be $25,000. Under Parks and Recreation, most of these projects represent an ongoing annual asset improvement replacement plan for equipment. The Murgatroyd Trail project consists of reconstruction of the existing asphalt trail from Canberra Street to Ellis. And this existing trail is currently in poor condition with substandard grades that do not meet accessibility requirements. Under library services, these projects have all been approved by the library board, who have met several times to discuss the budget. So included in your package are details on all of the 2024 projects. You'll see more detailed explanation, and it also shows you how the projects are being funded. So now we're going to switch to the 10-year capital plan. So over the 10 years, right now, we're projecting expenditures of $105 million, approximately. Last year at this time, our 10-year capital plan was $74.4 million, so there's a substantial increase. Projects have been increasing in price. Prices are spiking. We've seen this in the cost of equipment, in vehicles, and in infrastructure projects. In addition, as we're working on the development charge background study, staff have had to really dig deep to look at the estimates that we are putting in for these projects. And we work with the consultant as well, who have done numerous background studies and are really well acquainted with the price of projects. So it's allowed us to actually update some of our pricing to be more realistic as to what things are costing. So that's contributed to this increase in the 10-year plan. In terms of funding, the bulk of the 10-year capital plan, almost 60%, will be funded through reserves and debentures. Again, these two items are funded usually through property taxes or user fees, through water or wastewater fees. So I'm just going to talk a little bit now about reserves, because reserves are used to fund our capital. It's something that every year, we transfer funds into the reserves, but we've never talked aloud about them. So I'm taking this opportunity to show council what we're projecting in terms of our reserve balances. So right now, based on the capital plan, the capital reserve will have, and again, sorry, these are only the reserves that we use for capital projects. We do have other reserves, but they're not used for these kind of projects. They're used for other items that the township has. For instance, winter control is used if there was a major storm and we didn't have enough operating funds to cover it. So we are projecting a negative balance in the capital reserve from 2024 to 2027, and the fire reserve will be in a negative balance in the years 2026 to 27. And as you can see from the chart, in 2026, we anticipate a net negative position in our capital reserves. So what happens is we would be limited in the funds available for investment, and it would impact our cash flows. So the township will more than likely be in a position to engage in temporary borrowing and incur borrowing costs. Now, this is something other municipalities do. We've never been in that position because we've always had very healthy balances and good cash flow. So that is why, as part of this report, we are requesting that a portion of the 2023 surplus be transferred to the capital reserve. It'll allow staff to lower the 2024 contribution to the capital reserve. So that will help with the tax levy. And it'll give a little bit of extra funds to these reserves that have some pressure. Now, in terms of 2023, at this point, we're anticipating a surplus of about 700,000. So there is room to transfer 500,000 to the capital reserve. So if council were to approve that, the capital plan, instead of requiring a 4.2% increase to the levy, we could lower that down to a 2.71% increase to the operating levy. This will not eliminate negative balances in the reserves over the years, but it will lessen them. So this slide, it's taking the data from the previous slides, and it's just putting them into graph form. It's the same information, it's just a different visual representation for council. So this slide looks at what would we need to transfer to our reserves over the next 10 years. So we're projecting an increase to contributions annually for, the next 10 years. I've highlighted what this would mean to the levy. Now, in doing this, obviously there's unknowns that we don't know about, and there are ways of mitigating these increases. Obviously, council could remove projects from the plan or move them into the future. And staff have worked really hard already in trying to move what we could. Of course, removing rehabilitation or renewal projects is not always possible. If you delay things too long, it just will cost more money to repair them, and it could impact service delivery levels. If we saw an increase in grants from other levels of government, that would assist us with these projected tax levy increases. If we had infrastructure grants or modernization grants, we could use those to fund some programs. And finally, assessment growth would increase the tax base for the township, lessening the impact of these reserve increases on the tax rate. So there are a lot of unknowns because we really don't know what the assessment growth would be and what year may come to the township. Now this chart looks at the capital reserves that are supported through water and wastewater rates. Right now, we're working on a water financial plan and rate study. The one we're using is recommending increases to rates of 5% on an annual basis. And although these rates are increasing every year, we're not able to increase our contributions to the reserves because our operating costs are going up. A new water financial plan will be completed in 2025, and that will recommend user rates for the years 2026 to 2030. Again, this is the same information from the previous slide, but in graph form. And the final slide will speak to debt and debt repayments. So this is a forecast of debt over the next 15 years for the township. And what we do is we look at the provincial annual repayment limit, which is the red line on this graph, and we compare it to the limit that the township has set in policy, which is 10% of net revenues, which is the gray line. Now, the 10% is lower than the provincial maximum. And we've set that because we want to ensure that the township has flexibility in its operations and is sustainable. We don't want to lock up too much of our operating budget in debt repayments, and it'll limit us to perhaps do something else in the future. So that's why the 10% has been set. Now, this graph assumes revenue increases of 5% each year. Again, if we have large assessment growth, this graph would change in terms of the impact to the tax levy. Now, in terms of the capital that's in the debentures that are in the 10-year capital plan, which is on Schedule C of the report, you'll see it. We're also reminding council that in early 2025, we'll have to issue a debenture of approximately $3 million to meet our commitment regarding the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital contribution. So that is accounted for in this graph and in our analysis. So we are projecting the township will exceed the debt limit in 2025. It won't be a huge amount over 10%. You'll see in 2027 and 2028, we'll get a little bit higher than the 10%. Again, this is common in a lot of municipalities that are facing growth. We're paying for things ahead of the time before we actually get the revenue. So this concludes the formal presentation. It's basically the information in the report, just highlighting it to council. Sometimes it's easier to see it on a PowerPoint presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. That was well done. As always, your reports are very thorough and your presentations are excellent. Are you prepared to take questions now, or is this for information and you just want council to mull it over before the meeting on the 5th?
I think that if you have questions, the directors are all here. We can answer questions. But the intention also is to take it with you and look at it and spend more time with it, just because you have the opportunity, and believe, staff will also be looking at it. I think we've gone through it 4 or 5 times already. We'll continue to go through it.
Okay, so thank you for that. So is there anybody who has an immediate question that you're just dying to have an answer rather than mulling things over? We're good to just, okay, a comment? Go ahead, Councilor.
I have a comment, Madam Mayor, and I'm sure I speak for everyone here. And I looked at this earlier and became very depressed. But I just wish our staff weren't so good at preparing justifiable and responsible budgets and needs. And as much as I like to see Caitlin sitting there, I think that Donna's tutelage has given us yet another person in our staff who who does responsible things for us, and I'm just overwhelmed by what's here, but your projections show us that growth doesn't pay for growth. It just doesn't. All we're doing is putting off the treadmill, what it is, because we're taking money from tomorrow to pay for today's needs and suppress the need for tax increases. And that, West Lincoln has been so good at pumping up the reserves so that we aren't there. It's just so sad to see that with the changes in Bill 23 and various other bills, that we are facing an incredible amount of increase to our taxes. So there's no easy way out of this, and I just wanted to commend them on the work that I see here now, and that Councillor Trombetta and Councillor Braderick have the responsibility of guiding through what it is that our staff need help with. This isn't going to be an easy year, no matter what, so we can put it off, and I'll be happy not to deal with it until 2025 if you want.
Okay, so thank you. So let me remind you then, since it's been a bit, and Donna went through a very thorough presentation, that the recommendation report is to receive this report tonight, but also to apply the $500,000 from the projected surplus and transfer that to the capital reserve. So just so that you're aware of what we're voting on. Okay. Okay, so seeing no further discussion, I think we're ready to vote on that. Okay, so that should be in front of you. Hopefully everybody got it. We're receiving and putting the $500,000 in the capital reserve. Okay. So that's what you're voting on, and the vote is in progress.
It shut off. I had to restart it.
Oh, goodness. Okay, you need to touch the button periodically. Okay, but you're okay to vote?
I did.
Oh, you did? Okay, great. Okay, so that also carries, and we're going to go back to our Director of Finance and Treasurer, Donna DeFilippis, for an information report T-02-2024 to 2024 budget staffing review. And the recommendation is that information report T-02-2024 regarding the 2024 budget staffing review dated January 15, 2024 be received. So I need a mover for that, please. Councillor Riley, and a seconder, Councillor Trombetta. Okay, and so did you wish to also speak to that?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gannon. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation, but I just want to give some background as to why council's seeing this report. We've never really brought a report like this to council either during the budget process. But back when council approved the budget schedule, we committed to presenting capital ahead of the budget discussions, and also staffing needs, staffing pressures. So what's presented in this budget, in this report, are the pressures and needs that the directors and senior staff have brought forward during the budget process. They total, the staffing costs total $546,000. That would mean a 6% increase to the levy. We are all very responsible and knowledgeable of the pressures council are facing. And we do not anticipate that all these positions would obviously be approved as part of the budget in 2024. But we're bringing these to you, we thought it's important that you know where the pressures are. So as you continue to see these requests, they don't come as a shock. And we can start planning for these needs that are there and that are, impacting service delivery. And when we speak of service delivery, there's the service delivery that the public sees, very public facing, but there's the internal township service delivery that the public does not see, council does not see. It's things staff see. It's items that staff worry about that perhaps aren't getting done the way they should be getting done. That's what a lot of these positions are. So they're there for council's reflection. Staff has done a very good job of describing why the need is there. The only item we will be including in the base budget are the two items related to the Santa Claus Parade, as that was a direct direction from council. We were asked to look at the Santa Claus Parade and taking it in-house and what that would mean. So when we present the budget, you will see the position, the community engagement and events coordinator position, and the operating costs related to taking in the Santa Claus Parade.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions on this? Anything further? Okay, so we are just receiving it, so we can vote on that, seeing nobody with their hand in the air. Okay, so that vote is in progress and it should be up shortly. Everybody's voted?
Yes. Oh, I didn't vote. I don't want to vote.
Okay, so that vote also carries. Okay, so under 13 other business, members of committee, verbal updates from members of boards and committees if required. Is there anyone who has something they want to add this evening? Everybody's done. 13.2, members of council, any news items or things that you want to bring up? Okay, well, I'm going to take a minute and just say that Councillor Witteveen and Councillor Chichok and I are attending Roma. So we have delegations that have just gone forward. We've put the books together today to give to the ministers and the parliamentary assistants that we're seeing. And that information will be shared with council this week so that you know what the delegations are. We're going back again, talking about the escarpment crossing, of course, and we're also looking at the Libraries Act, the Public Libraries Act, and the fact that the grant that comes from the province has not changed in approximately 20 years. It still sits at the same number that it has all of these years, and obviously is a much smaller portion of the budget than it was in previous years, and so I wanted you to be aware of that. And I'm going to send you an email tomorrow looking to see if anybody wants to bowl on the team that we're putting together for Big Brothers and Big Sisters. We've done that in the past. We have 3 members of staff already ready to go. We can have a 6-member team. It is Tuesday, the 27th of February, starting around 2:45. So it's there. And then also, we're looking to put together that same week, only on Saturday the 24th, coldest night of the year walkers. So if you're interested in doing that, please let us know as well. I'll send a reminder tomorrow just so that you know the dates and the times and so on. So. Tonight's pretty cold. Last year, the coldest night of the year was not cold. It was a lovely evening. But yeah, I wouldn't want to be doing that right now. Okay. All right. Any new business items? Oh, you have something to say? Okay, please do ahead. Go ahead.
I wasn't going to, but since you're talking about the coldest night of the year, there is also the Kiwanis Trivia Night that night.
Ah.
So if you want to go out and get cold and have a bowl of chili after supporting people who don't have a place to sleep on those coldest nights, you can then go tax your brain by participating in the Trivia Night sponsored by the Kiwanis, which will raise money that will again go back into our community. For people who may need assistance in these times, after looking at that budget, I think we should double the attendance. Anyway.
For sure. Thank you for that reminder. I figured we'd walk early and then play trivia. Okay. Councillor Trombetta.
Also want to mention that I did attend the mayor's levy on the...
you went to something.
That I did attend, and it was a nice event that was there. A lot of members of the public did show up. I didn't skate, but I did have... Albert's not here. What are they called?
Oli boli.
Oli boli. So
Oli boli.
I did have 4 or 5 of those that were nice and fresh. So it was a nice event. I don't know if I was leaving that for you, Madam Mayor, or if you were going to say something about it. But
no, I was going to let it go. I was very happy with the turnout. But thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Braddock.
Through you, Mayor, I just wanted to ask Councillor Chichok for more details on that Kiwanis Trivia Night place and how to get tickets.
I have to say this now, and I know the mayor is very, very good at this. The questions are being put together by the mayor and her husband, the man behind the throne, you know, and they are They're very easy, she says, but they are thought-provoking. Anyway, it's being held at the Legion. There are, I think, 13 tables of 6. There'll be a series of other things going on, silent auctions with great prizes, and pardon me, yes, prizes. You bid on them and you own them. And some other games of chance, but the tables are going relatively quickly. It's a good night, and I think this year they're serving wings and...
They call it wings, rings, and things. because
Yeah,
they're
wings, rings, and things, so
deep-fried
onion
pickles
rings,
and
all
whatever
that good
else.
stuff for your cholesterol and arteries. But you know, you can wash it down with a little bit of alcohol, which will clear those arteries out and just drive home safely. But it does turn out to be a really fun night, and people do enjoy it. So I believe there's an entry fee of $30.
I don't know.
I don't know. I have to check that. I wouldn't want to mislead you.
We
We'll
have
get
to
that.
work at the event, we don't know.
I will watch for more information to come
Yes,
about
There
how to
has been
get
stuff on
tickets.
Facebook, so
There has
it
been.
will be more readily available the closer we get. Thank you. Okay, anything else from anybody? Okay, we adjourn this meeting at the hour of 9:58, according to this, 9:58 on that one, 9:56 on this one.